Go ahead and
Yep.
go ahead and add people in. And then as people come in, Meg, if you can, you may be able to control it easily, but if people could just mute themselves so that we can get things started here and everything. So if you're coming in, just go ahead and mute yourself.
I have not muted people, so we can just, you want to make a statement about?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as people come in, if they can just mute yourself so we don't have a whole bunch of
You can mute everybody. They can hear. They can hear if you mute them.
There was a test audio.
Yeah, just mute everybody.
I'll just mute everybody.
Because they can use spacebar to unmute themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got 24% participants. That's good.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi, Daddy.
So as people are coming in, if you're not muted, if you could mute yourself for now so that we can
Just a second.
not have a lot of background as we're getting.
I've muted everybody.
Perfect. I unmuted myself so I can talk to start, and then I'll mute myself when we get going with Eric talking and everything. So you have 24 people you said popped in altogether?
25 now.
25, good. Okay, and we're getting started a few minutes late. I apologize for that. That is the logistics of fighting with Zoom meetings and making sure they work. So appreciate everybody coming in, and we'll go ahead and start getting things going so we can get things caught back up. I'll make a few kind of housekeeping things, and I know I'm all darked out, but hi, I'm Rob, if you can see me. I am in my vehicle sitting outside of my daughter's swim class. So it's November the 5th. I've got 7:09 on the clock. We'll get going here, and I'm going to make a few, like I said, a few housekeeping announcements. First of all, I just want to remind everybody that the meeting tonight is for the board members to discuss agenda items and make decisions this evening. Board meetings are for the board. They're not for the membership necessarily. They're for the board to discuss business and to handle business. Annual meetings are when we have a lot more leeway, and those are membership meetings. Those are what the members control for elections, that kind of thing. So tonight's an opportunity for the board to discuss business, and we wanted to make sure we included people. So we've got some time considered in for people to be able to make some statements. One of the things I want to make sure we do, though, is if we ask you to make statements now, and then we have our presentation from Eric where he kind of gives the board the latest info, and we may answer your question with his presentation. So we're going to have him give us some information, and then we'll open up room for some comments. The comments will be timed. It'll depend on how much time we've got on the clock here so far, and it'll depend on how many people want to speak. So there is a chat section someplace, I think, that you can use to send messages. I don't know where it is. I'm looking for it now. Yeah, on mine, I'm using my phone. It's a little more button you can use. You can use the chat to throw some thoughts or something in if you want. We can take a look at those, but we will include some time for talking. And we'll make sure that everybody knows these are the times we're looking for those. Let's see, let me look down through and just make sure I know what's going on. Do we have anybody from US Lawns in the chat? They make it in tonight? If there's anybody from US Lawns, they were supposed to say somebody was going to try and make it from US Lawns. If they're here, if they could just unmute themselves.
So I've just unmuted.
Did you hear anything back?
Unmuted everybody. If you're from US Lawns, can you speak up?
And now I'm receiving a phone call. Nope. I was getting a phone call for a second there. I'm gonna have to block that so I don't get phone calls.
Nope, they're not here. Moving on.
Okay.
So nobody from US Lawns made it tonight. That's frustrating. Nobody from US Lawns.
Rob, I think you're cutting out.
Can you hear me now?
I muted him.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, muted, unmuted. US Lawns was we were asking US Lawns to be here tonight so they could give us an update on some of the things they've got done in the community, some of the positive things that they're seeing in the community. We'll try to get an update from them soon. Maybe I'll do like a quick Zoom.
Rob, I can do something at the end if you want me to.
Yeah, we might want to do that.
Okay.
Kate Anna is saying, does she see us? I don't know. Is she in the meeting? Sorry, I'm getting a message that somebody's having trouble with the meeting. I want to make sure I get that fixed before we go too much further here. Do you have anybody who's still in the lobby trying to get in?
No, I think we should get started.
Yeah, I'll just try to fix their thing as we get going here. Well, landscaping portion of it out. Let me see what we have next on here. So we're going to start moving over from there to talking about the reserve account CD. Eric, you want to go over that real fast while I chat with people and try to get their stuff fixed?
Real quick, we had a 9-month CD. Pull the CD page. We had a 9-month CD that matured on 8/20. It was 1.49%. Obviously, COVID tanked all of the rates of return. It auto renewed because they didn't send us the notice on 8/20 for 5%. Since we didn't get the notice, the bank has offered to keep it in there and make it 0.75%. I mean, no bank that I looked at is close to that for a 9-month CD. So I would say just leave it in there. It's the $300,000 we put in last year. So just if the board wants to just leave it in there if you want to try to do something else with it, but we're not going to get a better interest rate doing anything else with it. So I would say we just leave it in there and tell them to bump it to the 0.75 rate.
All right, so we can throw a quick motion up here. Motion to leave the $300,000 in the reserve account CD at the 0.75. All those in favor of the motion? Virginia?
Yep, I'm in favor.
Sabina? Sabina?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I'm in.
Okay.
Yes.
Meg, you're for it?
Mm-hmm.
Eric's for it, I assume, since he said he is, and I'm for it. So there we go. Motion will carry. So we'll go ahead and do that then, Eric.
Okay. I don't know what
All right.
the screen share is trying to make everything.
Again, the logistics of Zoom. So the next thing we're going to move on to is talking about the reserve study. Eric was made a notes, and I appreciate the notes you sent over, Eric. So we'll let you just go ahead and move on from there.
I'm going to stop sharing the screen so it can actually let me function in Excel for a second. There we go. All right, back to screen sharing. All right, so back up again. All right, so real quick, all of the board members know the reserve study, at least in general. I'm going to run through it real quick, covered items, not covered items. This is our 2018 spreadsheet of the reserve study. It's very unexciting. It has a breakdown of what were townhome expenses, what were common expenses. That's factored into our 2018 budget that got approved, which is this screen here, where we had the updated reserve plan is the one that they gave us. So this is what the company said, hey, you should do this if you're going to put it all combined. That was when Sid combined the two, because the company actually had them as separate. They had a common funding plan and they had a townhome funding plan. So originally from the company that did the reserve study, they were separate. When Sid did it, he put it together just for ease of kind of reading and going through. And we came up with this one at the bottom here that you can see. It's the big part on my screen, to try to spread out the expense over time so it wasn't such a big hit before. So if you look at what we were anticipating from the actual reserve study company that did it, they were saying the contribution should be 63, 64, 65, and it kept going up at a pretty high rate to where you're having to contribute 100,000 by 2045. When the board looked at that in 2018, we're like, well, that's kind of crazy because it's a ton of money to have to put into those later years. So we decided to start putting in more money sooner. So that's when we approved this.
Hey, Eric.
Yep.
The spreadsheet still just shows your comments limited to 2 minutes and all that. We're not seeing anything different.
It's not on this combined summary for the other one.
No, it's stuck on the original screen you had up.
Is that
there you go? Just changed. Yep.
Okay, so I have to actually change it on the share and not on my computer. Well, that's annoying. Okay, so now we know going forward.
Sorry.
Going back. So originally, here's what it was: townhome expenditures. Everything they said that was townhome. Side note for the townhome owners, this is the asphalt section. All these other sections for 2021, we pulled out of townhome expenses and made common expenses. So these are not townhome expenses anymore, even though the company said they were. So that's one thing we did at the beginning of the year. Common expenses, same thing. It's a breakdown of all the expenses that are anticipated in the next 40 years. The one thing that will be an issue going forward is if you look at this line, anything to do with sidewalks and concrete, they have a 65-year lifespan, which is not reflected in our reserve study because it only goes out till 40 years. So that means eventually we're going to get hit with a massive bill replacing sidewalks. So when originally Sid split it out, which I kind of explained earlier, after we pay these expenses, if you look at this, this is what got approved by the board. So everybody can see that, right? Proposed modification to the plan. All right. It was to start off with a higher amount in 2018 at 70,000 and have a 0.82% annual increase. So it wouldn't crush people on the back end. What that ends up with was 280,000. If we're only, let's say, 5 or 6 years away from having to replace every sidewalk in the whole neighborhood at that point, we're not going to have remotely close to the money to do that. So the one that I put together, it's a little bit higher, not too much, but we just need to plan that for everybody looking at this. This is a rough estimate. They're saying these are your expenses for the next 40 years. It does not include those sidewalk expenses that are hitting in close to 60 years. So those are going to be bigger numbers that'll get hit later on. So this is all just an educated guess of what our expenses are going to be. Other stuff could come up that we have to pay for. So we need to make sure there's enough money in there to cover things like the 71,000 that got paid in for the painting, pressure washing, and repairs on the townhomes this year. So things like that, it has to be budgeted for and paid into because our bylaws and CCRs don't let us just go in and say, hey, we're going to charge everybody $2,000 for this repair, because we'd have to get 67% consent to do that. And it's going to be the biggest pain in the butt ever. And it'll probably not happen. So the board has been budgeting to make sure that we can pay our bills, is essentially what all this is. So that's the 2018 reserve fund. Let me change over. Screen share, new share. All right, so we're back to the agenda one. All right.
Can I ask a question? Can anyone hear me? I'm not sure. Can anyone
Not right
hear
now,
me?
not right now, just because we need to get through this portion, but we will have a time when people will be able to ask some questions.
Okay, thank you.
So the split of expenses comes in. The 2018 reserve plan originally was built out. We shorted the fund this year. So if you look at it, we were supposed to be contributing 71,000. We were putting in 45,000 because last year's board did not want to raise the townhome dues significantly. That's why there was only a $10 increase last year. So we intentionally shorted the reserve fund to not raise townhome dues last year. If we continue to do that, there's not going to be money in the reserve account sufficient to cover expenses when the major bills come up. So that's why all this kind of started. Last year was the first time we started dividing out expenses. Then we went in and started dividing out the whole reserve fund and seeing what needed to get put where. Reserve expenditures, that'd be this one. This is what we originally started pulling. So reserve expenditures, the townhome onlys, it's literally just townhome building exteriors. That's the only thing that right now, until we decide on the asphalt, is townhome specific. The other one is going to be the asphalt that the boat is going to be on. Everything else from that previous sheet I showed you that had a massive list of everything listed as townhome expenses all got moved down to common expenses. So all of this stuff used to be townhome expenses. Now it is common expenses. So that's a major savings for the townhome because we moved it over. Whereas the reserve fund was originally split from the reserve study, it was like 73% was townhome expenses and 27 was common expenses. Now a lot more of that total amount is considered common expenses, just to kind of put it in perspective for people watching that aren't on the board. So in terms of, that's kind of what we're looking at with the reserve study, how that was done. And now that's how we split. We started splitting everything else out. So really what we're looking at now is how the asphalt needs to get split out and the rationale. So right now, the major options are going to be, one, everything's considered common, including townhome parking spots. Two would be townhome parking spots are considered townhome only, and then the rest of the roads are considered common. And then the third major one would be that Caprington is considered common, but then all the roads and parking spots in the townhomes are considered townhome only. So that's what the board needs to vote on. I have breakdowns of the expenses of those. It's not quite as important as just general understanding. So I'll go back to, I guess it's in my notes. The major bylaws, people need to be aware for this. In the bylaws, Article 2, Section 2, it defines common areas and includes all privately maintained roads. CCR Article 3, Section 2E is property rights of owners. And it basically says that common areas are available for everyone, but there are instances where they're limited to either single family or townhome use. And it gives an example of the parking lots. So it doesn't specifically say parking. I think it says parking lots, not parking spots, but I can pull that up real quick, do a screen share. Article 3, Section 2, so the board can see it. New share. CCR. Yeah, so it says not limited to parking areas. How the board wants to determine parking areas, you could technically argue that parking areas includes the roads that are next to the parking spots because you need them to pull in and out of the parking spots. Or you could say that parking areas is just the actual parking spots. That's why I think those are going to be the three main splits that people are looking at. Either everything's common, everything's townhome except Caprington, or everything's going to be common except the parking spots. Screen share back. And then the only other thing that would be a consideration in terms of how it should be split is CCR Article 3, Section 3. It basically says that every homeowner has a perpetual non-exclusive right to use common roadways to basically access county roads, which Caprington up until Allendale was a county road. So all the roads that you would need to leave your parking spot as a town homeowner to get either to Caprington past Allendale or to get out to Harrisburg, town homeowners with their deed have a right to use those roads. Single family owners do not have a deeded right to use those roads. So that's the three major items to be considered when we're deciding how to split it. One is that all the privately maintained roads are considered common area per the bylaws, but townhomes have an exclusive right to use their parking spots, and they have a deeded right to use those roads that single family home owners don't have. So that's kind of the three main talking points in deciding how to split it. Do any of the board members have questions or comments on how you think we should split it?
So I guess let me just make sure to keep moving it along in the right way then. So Virginia, do you have anything to throw out there at this point on the topic?
Nope, I'm just paying attention.
Okay. Sabina, anything from you?
Not for now, Rob.
Okay. Meg, anything?
No, sir.
All right. Eric, on this topic right here, are you ready for me to have some homeowner input at this point? I know I'm looking through your
Yeah,
notes
if
here.
no one from the board has any, you might as well get homeowner input before people vote, because it's going to end up being one of those three. I mean, I had like 6 options before, but none of the other ones make a ton of sense.
So what I would ask is if you are, and I already saw one comment down there, if you are wanting to speak at this point, if you could just throw something in the chat real quick to let me know that you're wanting to speak so that I can kind of get an idea for how many people
You
are
can give
interested
me their
in.
name, Rob, and I can unmute.
Yeah, and they should, if they can pop
Or I
something
can
in the chat
unmute
real quick.
everybody and we can just ask everyone to just take one at a time.
Let's not do that. That'll turn crazy. Let's well, let me address this real quick while people are figuring out the chat or if they want to talk or not on this specific topic. So I'm sorry, Renee was saying, I'd like to know why we are looking at 40 years from now. The typical is 20. I don't know where you got the statistic that the typical is 20. I will say that we decided to look at 40 years. That's why. There's nothing wrong with planning further out. I don't think you could sue us for being more prepared. So I think that's kind of the argument that we would have. So we're kind of going off of what we got from the reserve study and just how the best planning. So some people might plan 20 years. I don't know. I don't know where they get that.
That's just been the typical on other places I've been. So that's why I just wondered about the 40. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And let me see. I think I saw Kate popped up in there. Kate, if you'd like to speak, if you want to go ahead and hop in at this point, and let's just say you got 2 minutes to kind of make a statement on what you're thinking, and we'll listen to you. Okay.
Kate, is that Kate's iPad? I guess, is that you?
Can you
They
hear me
can
now?
hold down spacebar to mute themselves if they can't.
Oh, they can. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sorry, it's a little crazy here, but I'll try to keep it as possible. First, I would like to say we're all one big community, friends. We should not let this divide us in any way, and I'm sure that this is not the intention of the board to pit the townhomes against the single-family homes, but it does seem like some people are taking it that way. We need to remember we need to work together on this for the best outcome for the community. I would like to persuade the board to vote for option 3 on dividing the common fund and option 2 for the paving. I think option 2 is best for the community, as the parking spaces should definitely be paid for by the townhomes exclusively, as they are our spaces. But the road costs should be distributed by both single-family homes and townhomes. The roads can and are used by everyone, and so I think the cost is best distributed among everyone, with only the parking spaces being paid solely by the townhomes. With the common fund growing exponentially and the townhomes saving for their share, it will be easier to have this money in the bank before it needs to be spent, if that makes sense.
Makes 100% sense. Is there anything? You've got plenty of time left if you've got more thoughts. I was going to extend you some extra time if you needed it, but you've got plenty of time left.
Okay, because I have a few words for option 3 of dividing the common fund. If you guys want to talk about that now, or if you just want to keep it the part.
No,
We'll
the
try
comment
to
will be later.
Yeah, we'll try to stick to the paving for now, but that's great. So anything else on the paving, or do you want me to jump on to the next person here?
You can jump to the next person.
Okay, which just happens to be, it looks like, Eric Carter. So Eric, same thing. If you want to hop in, we can get you in here.
You run and get him. He's our 2-year-old upstairs. So if anybody wants to jump in.
Okay, I'll skip him and we'll come back to him then. Dan, if you're there, if you'd like to go ahead and hop in.
This is Dan. I put in a message. I'm in agreement with Kate. And I also feel kind of like this is dividing the community, and we need to work together as one community and do the best for the community. And I think option 2 on the paving is the route we should go.
Very good. Very good.
all I
Anything
got.
else, Dan? Like I said, you got plenty of time if you want to throw any other thoughts.
No, I think there were some more people that wanted to speak, so I'll pass it on to
Okay.
them.
All right.
Just
Thank
a
you.
general announcement for everyone. When you're saying the options 1, 2, and 3, the board may not have the last presentation in front of them because it's on a screen share from me. So just specify the one. I know options.
Option 2, common, should be all roads. And then hometown. Oh, sorry. Sorry, the parking spots should be townhome owners. Sorry, option 3. All roads, common, townhome, parking spots.
Okay.
All right. Ben, are you out there where you want to hop in?
This is my first meeting, so I'm really trying to completely understand what is transpiring. So basically, the common area will be considered just Caperton if it need paving. None of the other roads that are connected in the single family home will be taken out of the fund to be used for paving.
It's, I guess, quick explanation if you didn't see the previous video. So you see there's 3 listed, like 49, 50, 51 on my screen. It's how it's going to get paid for out of the reserve fund. So we're going to split the reserve fund into stuff that's only townhome only money. That's the whole reason of splitting it. So if you're a townhome owner and you pay into that townhome fund, it can't get used for the pool. It can't get used for the conservation area. It has to be used for townhome property. So that's why we're doing this to begin with. And then with the asphalt, it's determining what's going to be considered a community expense and what's going to be considered a townhome specific expense. So what the other 2 people have voiced their opinion for has been that all the main roads like the Burke Hill, pretty much every road that's in the townhome area would be considered a common expense that the general fund would pay for, not the townhome fund. And then that the parking spots would be a townhome only expense that the townhome owners would pay for, and not the single family owners. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, that makes total sense. Now I got it a little bit. I'm just trying to figure out like the increase possibly on the HOA fund from the townhome owners. If it's just directly, and again, I guess you just explained it to me, directly being for parking spots and
it'll actually come down, since I think you still have more time. It'll come down to the break's going to be, it's basically just funding the townhome reserve fund. So any extra that gets paid is not getting put into the common pool. The dues are pretty close to paying that now. It would be the money that's going into the townhome only pool that would be used for the stuff like we did this past year with the painting and pressure washing and repairs, the new roofs, anything that has damage like siding, all that stuff. And then whatever gets designated as the part of the asphalt group. But it's not going to be anywhere near the increase everybody was freaking out about online.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarity on that. I think a lot of numbers got tossed around that weren't quite right.
Yeah, because that 30% increase seemed a little high, but thank you for explaining that to me.
Eric, I'm sorry. Do you happen to have the map showing the roads? I pretty remember it, but I just wanted to confirm that everyone sees this.
Well, he's pulling that up. Let me read what Laura was posting. She said, "I don't necessarily want to speak, but I do think that the parking spots should be a townhome owner responsibility, and the rest should be the community." And she understands the big gray area.
I'm sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just reading the comments here, and then if you want to go ahead and say what you're going to say, and then I'll invite Eric if he's back. I think Eric Carter was still waiting. He went to put the 2-year-old down to sleep.
So I just want to confirm the main entrance from the townhomes is actually the Caprington Drive only. Okay.
Okay, unmuted.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we're saying Caperton only being the expense would be Starting at Allendale, it's owned by the county. It's from Allendale, which this map isn't completely accurate. It's a little bit past that, all the way up to the entrance.
Okay, so the entrance is Caprington. Okay, thank you.
All right, is it Kate? Has Erica? Sorry, some stumbling names now. Has Eric Carter made it back yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Eric. All right, floor is yours, sir.
Okay, so we're only talking about 2 minutes on the paving, correct?
Just talking about the paving, and I've been limiting it to 2 minutes. We'll see how crazy it gets. Most people are way below 2 minutes, but we'll see what you got.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you, and I'll keep these 2 minutes light and relating to 3 simple points. One, we are all and always have been a community spread across 295 lots, and the discussions are a push to divide these lots into 64 townhomes and 231 single family homes. We have traditionally made these decisions for our community based on the common good for all 295 lots. Splitting these decisions goes against the best interests of the community as a whole, and we should continue this tradition. 2, when we contract the repavement of our common roads and parking lots, we should keep it as it has been since the beginning, all common areas. This is for the benefit and enjoyment of all in the community and has been since the beginning. I think it would be in the benefit of all to keep it that way as a shared common area. As we have before come together to meet the challenges of the future, we will do so again when it comes to these improvements. And 3, I'll talk on later.
Okay. Just for your information, you're at like 1 minute and 25 seconds. So you've got a little bit of time left in your 2 minutes. If you got any more thoughts off the cuff on that, Eric, I mean, good points.
Well, the third one's talking about the reserve fund. So,
okay.
But basically, out of these options, I would want to keep it as option 2, or where it's all the roads and everything is all common.
Is that the one that includes the townhome parking lots all as part of the community? Or I know some people were saying townhomes take care of the parking lots, and I don't have the option numbers in front of me.
I was dealing with Ellie when you were talking about that. The option that has all as common is what I would be going for.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Was there anybody else that wanted to hop in? Maybe you couldn't figure out the chat and you just want to unmute and say, hey, here I am. Okay. With that said, then, Eric, are you wanting to move into some board discussion on an actual vote then at this point? On that portion of it, I should say?
Unless anyone else from the board needs anything else to discuss, I would assume we can vote. Does anyone have their questions or comments on it?
Well, I'll start off by saying that, first of all, I very much appreciate the comments and the conversation from people tonight. And we always say every time we have people coming to these meetings, thank you very much for coming to the meetings, because we don't like operating within a vacuum. I think I heard several people say the same thing tonight, and I think it's a good point. We don't want to see divisiveness in the community. We don't want to see the community divided. We are, however, a community that is different. We're not divided, but we're separated. In that the day that the townhomes were built in the neighborhood, they paid more from the beginning because there are townhome specific expenses. And one of the things that the board has talked about over the years is the fact that those expenses for the townhomes that the townhomes are paying into are managed by one board who is, generally not living in the townhomes, and the waters get muddied sometimes. What we don't want to see is people pay money year after year into their dues, and then you live in the townhomes and you look around and you say, why can't we get pressure washing done? Why can't we get our roofs repaired? Why can't we get certain things taken care of? And it's because the money gets diverted to the wrong pot. So when over my years on the board, when I've asked for any kind of a split out, I've asked for the board to find a way to make sure that the money is being put in the right pot so that people have access to the funds. I personally think that being more definitive with the townhome budget versus the general budget. It's not a single family budget, it's a general budget, because everybody in the community pays for things like the pool, everybody in the community pays for things like the sidewalk, everybody in the community pays for common expenses. So the townhome owners and the single family owners need to make sure that the money we're paying in for those general expenses is there for the general expense. And we need to make sure that the townhome expenses have the money they need to have. So I think it's important we look far out in the future, like that 40 years that we've done. I think it's important that we try to make sure that the reserves are funded properly. So I thank everybody for being here tonight, but that's kind of why we've come to the place where we've come to. It's not to divide, it's to bring us together in a way that we can be more managed. So with that said, we've got a couple different things. What's the best way to make this decision, Eric, in a way that we can kind of manage it out? It's kind of hard to do it under like a Robert's rules with this, but is there a motion that you can throw on the floor that I can work with to get started? Like, it sounds like the most popular thing that was discussed this evening was splitting the property so that we look at when we say what paving is the general fund, what paving is the townhome fund. I heard multiple times people agreeing that they see where the parking spots would be something the townhome owners might be responsible for. The overall parking or overall roads around the community, to include the roads that circle around the townhomes, are more of a general expense. So can we use that as a starting point to kind of get this going?
That's fine. We did have one question about tabling it again. We've had this a couple times. No, we can't table this discussion because we already shorted the reserves over $20,000 this past year to not raise townhome dues. So it can't keep getting pushed off, because every time it gets pushed off, it's going to be an even bigger increase. So that's for Ben, David.
Thank you. I appreciate you throwing that out there. Yeah, the only thing we're doing is pushing it deeper and deeper. And I think that's something we should throw out there too, is in the years past, we've raised the townhome dues a couple % here and there and left the single family dues where they were. We've raised the townhome dues a few % more than the single family dues. So we've done things where we've tried to slowly eke this up, and we're trying to figure out a way to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and get it there a little bit quicker so that people don't just keep dragging this out and kicking it down the road and it keeps going up. So my motion would be, I would put a motion on the floor to approve, I'm trying to think of the best way to word this, so help me out with it. Approve the option that makes all roads throughout the community that are owned by the homeowners association, all named roads, common areas that are covered by the common expense, and the parking spaces in the townhome area specifically for townhome use only, and covered by townhome reserves. And that would be a starting place for it. From there, I'll throw it over to you, to Eric. Is there a better way, or am I wording it wrong?
No, I think that's about as close. We're going to basically that the asphalt split for the reserve study is going to be, all roads are going to be considered a common expense, and then the parking spots will be considered a townhome only expense.
So from there, Virginia, you want to weigh in on the discussion on that particular point? Do you see it differently? Do you want us to consider a different option?
No, I think that's this is awesome, because and then I understand, and I thank for everybody for coming, but I understand the point. You know, like Rob said, it's not separation, it's not division. It's that as long as I've been on the board, like we've been looking for years to figure out how to separate, because you've got, you know, everybody who's been at the meetings every year, our annual meeting, we always say that the homeowners are carrying the townhomes. the homeowners are carrying the townhomes. So now we've got a separation. We got a way to separate it. We need to, like we said, we need to solve this problem. And now, like Eric is saying, we don't want to put it off any longer, because if we keep doing this, then whoever's on the board next year would probably rip the Band-Aid off and go straight by what the reserves are saying. So we want to just go ahead and just try to get and eliminate the problem now. So I'm okay with it. So I think that we should just go ahead and get that motion and move on.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, Meg, any thoughts on the split? Do you see it differently? Would you prefer to see the roadways separated off to where they're townhome only? Do you think that, what are you thinking on the pavement split?
Well, it's funny when not funny, but I was kind of more in the Caperton only, the number one. I said, but as I really thought it through and see, like, I'll look at like who's using what, and like my kids are zipping all through there on their bikes, and I'm taking walks back there, so I've shifted. So yeah, I would agree with what you said, Rob, because everyone is kind of using it, has the potential or are using those roads. So yeah.
Okay. Sabina, thoughts?
Definitely for a common area of all roads and parking for townhomes.
Okay. And yeah, and I agree with Meg there. My thoughts originally coming into this when we first spoke at the last meeting, I was thinking Caperton is the main roadway. That's what everybody uses. And I've talked with several town homeowners, and I've told them, those little roads back there, Lanark, things like that, it wouldn't affect me if those roads were gone. However, I do see the point where we're getting conversation going where people are saying, no, hold on, even though those roads, did you think when you came into the neighborhood that those roads belong to the community? And yeah, I honestly did. I've always just looked at those as our roads. So yeah, I think if you live down on Kilchurn, you should help with the repaving of road up on Lanark. And in the same way that the taxes from the people up on Lanark are going to help pay for the repaving down on Kilchurn. So I think it's fair.
As a homeowner, I wouldn't go near those parking spots. Those are like, those are not mine. Those clearly belong, so it's kind of like, that's where it stops. Like,
Yeah, I think visitor parking makes sense if you're up there visiting somebody at the townhomes, but that's the same though as a guest who comes from outside our community who uses our roads or who parks in it. So yeah, I think I agree. I think I've been swayed to look at it a little bit differently. So is there any thought, any other throw in or discussion from anybody on the board on changing that motion, or do we just want to go ahead and move forward with a vote on a motion to approve Caperton being all named roads in the community being a common expense that are owned by the homeowner association, and the parking lots being a townhome expense? Any other?
Nope. Vote. Move on.
So I'd make the motion to go back. Make a motion for all the named roads owned by townhomes and the common area expenses be common reserve funds, parking lots. In this will the townhomes only expense. So I'll make the motion to do the motion for number 2, correct?
So yeah, it'd be a motion we're going to vote on right now is all named roads in the community that are owned by the homeowners association would be a common expense for the community, and the townhome parking spots would be a townhome only expense. Now, of course, the pool would fall under the common area too, and approved by the whole community. So if everybody's all good with that, we'll go ahead and vote on that. So I'll ask for a vote from Eric.
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
Sabina?
Yes, for me.
All right, motion will carry. All right, go ahead and move on to the next part. Meg always likes when we get something done. Go ahead and Eric, if you want to continue on the next portion, I'll mute.
Fun never ends. All right, the reserve contribution split. This one will be a little guess, trickier. Here's my spreadsheet. There we go. All right, so we went over this in the last meeting. Nothing really changed too much. Option 1 is the most reflective of what actually got paid in by the owners. So option 1 is saying we take the expenses that were divided out and separated, where like townhomes pay more for the insurance. They have their own trash that is only for them. There was townhome maintenance, and then the landscaping specific to townhomes. Those 4 things were separated out in those years. The option 1 split would have been 334,000 in the common fund, 130 in the townhome fund. That is the most accurate reflection of what people actually paid into reserves. Option 2, we don't really need to look at too much. I just took the insurance one out just to try to get a middle ground, because that was the only thing that some people didn't realize, that like 95% of that expense was the townhome property coverage and not the D&O insurance or the general liability insurance. Option 3, which to me makes no sense because it shows a negative contribution of the single family owners that were actually paying more. But that one was calculated by taking all of the expenses for the entire budget and dividing it evenly by household. So that meant if the average household expense was, let's say, $700, even though most of that expense was townhome specific, everybody got contributed as 700, and then everything paid over that counted as their contribution to reserves. So that's why this one has townhomes being a huge number and common being 155, but it also shows like a negative contribution for 2017 and 2018. So in terms of the split, option 1 makes the most sense. If people want to try to finagle it to try to come up with putting more money in the townhome budget initially, that's something that got discussed before. As another option, I just went and pulled the difference between, so I basically averaged option 1 and 3. So I took the 334,000 and added it to the 155,000 divided by 2. Did the same thing with the other one, and you end up with this. The only thing that is not taken into consideration with this divide is down here in my note, is that all of these are basically a division of what people paid into reserves. So the townhome one is based on the townhome dues. The common one is based solely on single family dues. So when you come down here and you have the splits, it's not factoring in that the townhomes needed to be paying into the common reserve fund as well, which when I went back and looked at the years, it's typically 13 to 21% of their reserve contribution should have been going to the common fund. So that being said, when I did the average of that, it would have been the 245, 220 split. But if we want to say that they're supposed to pay some toward the common fund, it would be like 265, 200. But that's what we need to figure out tonight. And I guess right now, board members can ask questions and your thoughts on exactly how you think it should get split. Essentially, right now, there's $465,000 in there. It's closer to 475 when we finally do the split. But in terms of doing the budget breakdown and dividing it all out, it came out to 465 when I split it all out because it didn't factor in all of the interest accrued over those last 3 years. So feel free to comment, ask questions, figure out how you guys think we should divide it before we open it up to general comments.
Yeah, so I think this is one we probably need to kind of sort out amongst ourselves first and get some of our stuff kind of figured out, because quite honestly, and I'll be the first one to say it, I don't know the best way to split it. So I need a little bit of guidance as to what I would look for is I'm looking for what is probably the most fair way to split it out, and also what's going to impact the community the least amount. It makes no sense to short the townhomes on the townhome reserve and then also short the general reserve, because then the townhomes are getting double dipped trying to catch both up. So is there a way that we can fund the general fund and the townhome fund at a rate where everybody's not playing catch up all over the place at a huge percentage increase? increase, I guess. And that's kind of the information I need. I'm muted so you guys can talk. Yeah, I was going to leave it to you to talk, and I know Sabina, I think, was going to pop in and just let you guys kind of converse.
Yeah, I needed again Eric's contribution on the exact split he was talking to, but I think he will be showing it now based on your comment.
I was just erasing other things so I could go and plug numbers in if you need me to plug it into the reserve funding plan for the next 30 years. Random numbers. So essentially, here's option one. This is the one that if everything's broken down, townhome owners would have paid in 130,000. Single family owners would have paid in 334,000. That's why the single family owners always said that they were paying in extra, which they were, and it pretty much all went into the reserve fund because they're over their expenses.
I'm sorry, Eric, this is the current situation for the next 40 years reserve fund?
This is the money that's in our reserve fund right now. We need
okay. Okay.
So where are we? Where are we in the reserve fund? I mean, is there a way to know where we are in the general fund? I mean, we've been overpaying into the general fund. Where does the general fund need to be versus where the townhome budget reserve needs to be?
That's back to the same question you guys asked last time, which doesn't really get to, I think, what you're trying to get to. You're trying to get like a set number, but we have to set those numbers first to say where it needs to be over the next 20 years. Because if one starts with $50,000 and they need 500,000 in 20 years, they have to pay a lot more money in than if they start off with 200,000.
Okay, so this is what I was saying a few minutes ago. If you look at the $334,432.38, and then you see what the townhome paid in. So this is real numbers. This is not play numbers. This is exactly what this is what the homeowners were taking a hit with. This is what the homeowners were taking a hit with. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And that's what the townhomes were paying in. So, and this is the reason why there's separation, not the separation of a neighborhood, the separation of the money. So people can really see exactly what their expenses paying for instead of it all bunched up together. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's why, I mean, if we went with this number, I can plug in, it's going to suck for the townhomes, but I can create one. And
so Eric, could you repeat again what's the contribution for the reserve money? You mentioned insurance. What else is there?
It's everything that's in the reserve plan. So
it's like a big, is there any big point bullets of what exactly?
Yeah, the reserve study. Here's all the townhome ones.
So basically, yeah, the reserves pay for all the things that are in the reserve study, and the reserves pay for things. There's a whole list in there, but they pay for all the big ticket items that need to be replaced over time. So it's kind of like, and I use the car as an analogy all the time. The reserve funds, your savings account isn't used to pay for an oil change or your gasoline throughout the month. That's coming out of your operating budget. Your savings account's being used when it's time to replace the engine in the car or you need to buy a whole new car. And that's the way it is with us. Roofs for the townhomes, a new pump at the pool, replacing the lining of the pool. These are all items that are, sidewalk replacement, asphalt. Those are all items that come out of the reserves. That's what we set money aside for.
So if I would summarize it, Rob, now, please correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about mostly general common area, sidewalks and asphalt, pool, and mostly townhomes where it's roofs and overall townhomes maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a litany list of things, but yeah, that's anything that's not in our our regular just operating budget throughout the year. And so the tough part is, I mean, it's a huge list, but
I guess I'm trying to
the
figure out-
townhomes have certain. I'm trying to figure out what.
I guess I'm trying to figure
I was
out
just saying,
of how much is townhomes out of this maintenance versus how much is the common area.
well, and that's the general numbers for the budget there. Yeah, when you look at the budget, you see the numbers listed for expenses, and that's what we're breaking it out so that we can see that, well, it costs this much money to do these things at the townhomes every year, and it costs, for instance, when a townhome roof needs repaired throughout the year, we get quite a bit of those leaks and stuff that comes out of the townhome operating as opposed to coming out of the general operating expenses. And when you need to replace some chairs at the pool or something, you take that out of the general, you don't take that out of the townhome. And that's what we're trying to do, is break that out so that people can see the money exactly where it is, and so that especially future boards, so that they don't take money from one place that it's been saved for and put it in another.
Right, makes total sense.
So go ahead and, just as a starting point, Eric, can you plug in the numbers just as they are, as though you take the money that the townhome owners have been paying in over the years into the reserves, and you just punch those numbers in. You take the single family, what they've paid, into the general, just throw those numbers in, and let's just use that as a starting point to see where it lands. I know you said it's going to be terrible for the townhome owners, but at least it'll give us this is really what
it's really not.
has actually been
It just
paid.
depends on how much they need to pay. So all of these, you can see it now. It's the parking split. The split is, I've designed them all so I can just open new spreadsheets and just plug in the number in the first one. They have a 1% increase each year, so it's slightly graduated. I was trying to have over 200,000 in each one at the end of 2048. I mean, you can not have that much in it, but the issue we had with the combined reserve study was it was about 200 some thousand in it at the end of that asphalt pavement period. And if there's other major expenses, then we may not have the funds to cover it. If we have 200,000 in each account, then over the next period, they should be able to cover any major expenses that are coming up. So if we did the 130, that's what this sheet is I just created. The 130 starting point for 2020 and the 335, they would need to be contributing 40,000 into reserves this year. Common fund would be 38,000. So if we change it, so that'd be 40 common. Townhomes was 40, common was 38. So if townhomes is 40, common is 38. Based on the budget we have right now that's not finalized, it would be 2,366. Yeah. Well, let's make this 2,367. What does that come out to be? Which is still under 200 a month. What we're looking like. That makes sense? Probably not.
Well, part of what we're seeing, we're only seeing part of the spreadsheet, so it's kind of hard to see all of it and figure it out.
All right, so this is our budget. This is the same budget spreadsheet that we had before, that we've had for the last 5 years, where we put the assessment amount, annual contribution. I have it put together, so literally all I have to do is change the reserve account number, and it changes the total per unit breakdown here. So when I change that contribution amount, it changes the per unit expense. So the single family homeowners, it's 614. For the townhomes, it's 2,366. So if we make it 2,366, and really we don't need to make it 614, it would stay 620. But that would be at $198 a month, is a 23% increase. And then it'll be like standard cost of living increases from now on, and they should have everything covered.
I mean,
And that's based off of splitting the reserve as it was paid.
that is splitting the reserve as it was paid, that 335, 130. So if you look on this one, this is the 2020, maybe I'll make it bigger for you guys. So 2020 is the starting number for this area. So it's 130, there's the 71,000 coming out. It has their 27,000 going in, has the 18,000 going in, which was what we designated to be going in for the 2020 reserve contribution. That's why those numbers are there. So they would pay basically 40,000 a year into reserves. So the way it looks is, yeah, I'll go back to that page. So for the townhome owners watching, trying to figure out what the hell is he doing clicking between all these sheets? I'm sure the board members are probably thinking the same thing. So essentially what this breakdown is the townhomes, this is what they're paying, column F. G is what single families are paying. So out of the reserve contribution for the common fund for 2021, the townhomes will be putting in $8,000 or $88,000. The single families will be putting in about $30,000 to make that $38,000 total. I need to change that number. That's why my number was wrong. I was like, something's wrong here. It should be more than 200. There we go. Yeah, so it's 24432. So it ends up $20.36. That can't be right. Missed a number. There's another 4 in there. So what happens when I have to do spreadsheets on the fly. All right, so if we did that original split, it's $204 a month for the townhomes. And it's that same number, the $614 for single family. And that's with
I literally just realized I could move my screen around to see your whole screen, and it's making so much more sense when I can see everything that you're.
Oh, you still on your phone?
Yeah, I was looking at the far there. I zoomed it and zoomed out. Okay, so I can zoom in and actually read what you're, because I was looking. I'm going. I don't see where you're showing the expenses. So the far right hand side where you got the single family and the townhome.
Yeah, so this is what we've always had on the budget that has the breakdown of, hey, this is what each group's paying. Or we had the 2021, the percent increase, and realistically, we'd have an extra excess cash of $1,300. So I mean, if you guys really wanted to keep it at 200 for the townhomes, I mean, what's that going to be a loss of? My calculator, 369, whatever's needed, times 12 times 64. So it put us $2,800 short of what it needs to be, but there's an extra $1,000 from the single families. So if we did that split, we could put this townhomes at $200 a month, and it's close enough we can make up the difference in that $1,000 somewhere in the budget. My
only concern is, first of all, we're saying to the single family homeowners, hey, we're going to cover the townhomes. So that's part of it. I'm sure the single family homeowners are sitting there going, why am I paying extra to cover the townhomes? The other thing is, I know that every year expenses run beyond our initially planned, amounts. We see a lot of expenses. So I'm concerned that if we run it so close to the dollar, as we're deciding this, I'm talking to the board with this right now. If we run it so close to the dollar and we go ahead and shave off a couple dollars, those dollars make a difference. I mean, we've seen in the past where we've ended up raising the dues by a couple dollars to try to get things right. So, I mean, looking at the way it is, their budget's going to be so tight. Sorry, my dogs are in the background. I would lean towards making it like an even 205 or something to get that dollar amount where all the town homeowners have all the operating expenses they need, and they're not going to be turning around and saying, hey, can we get pressure washing done? And we go, yeah, you ran out of money 6 months in. So I'd be more inclined to see a dollar or two more than to drop it a couple dollars. Which I realize that makes me very unpopular when I say more, but anybody else? I mean, what does that look like from your perspective, Eric, looking at the number?
I mean, it just makes it 205. It's not going to really change anything. It's going to put a little extra money in the account, but it's only Now you're talking about a $5 difference over 12 months times 64. It's a less than a $4,000 difference. So, I mean, it's $4,000 more than they'll have paid in, that any excess. And that's the other reason why dividing this is useful, because at the end of the year, like last year, we were under budget. Well, if we're under budget and you're a townhome owner and you ended up paying in more than you needed to, then that fact that we were under budget there, that should be going to your reserve account, not the common reserve account, because it's already funded for the common reserve account. So that's another reason why I wanted to split it up, so that at the end of the year, because we were under budget last year and we're almost dead nuts on like the 2 previous years. So we're really not missing our budgets by much, just overall. So I would say that if we did 205, like there shouldn't be any expenses. There might not even be much of an increase the following year. We would just have to see what the expenses turn into. But I would
That's
be
part
okay
of my
with,
thought process too, is if you got if you rip the Band-Aid off and you got it at 205, it's an easier number to write a check for, whatever. First of all, I've heard that from people in the past when we came out with these pennies and cents, and they're like, would you just round it? So if you made it 205, I'm thinking in future years, those extra couple dollars might make a difference, where a board looks and goes, hey, we came in under budget, we're looking good. I don't think we need to raise the dues at all, and that can pay off on the back end too. Sabina, I know I want to get Megan, Sabina, and Virginia. And so Sabina, why don't you jump in? Have you got thoughts, questions, concerns, anything? Right?
I just want to make sure, Rob. So I do see on the spreadsheet currently decrease for single family homes from 155 to 153. Is this correct?
Going to stay the same. We're not reducing them at all.
Okay, yeah. So I want to make sure that it stays the same, and then everything else, like I don't want to decrease single family homes in order to increase townhomes.
Okay,
No, if we're overpaying, we'll just continue to overpay, and eventually it'll catch up as the expenses get more and you go up in percentages, the economy changes, and eventually it'll catch up. And then at some point in the future, they'll have to raise dues again for single family. Just for now, we'll just be paying more into our reserve.
Correct. I understand. Yeah. I just want to make sure that it's going to be fair and we're not decreasing anything on single.
We need to get back to the actual split though, because the total budget number doesn't matter. It's going to be dictated based on how we split it. So if we're going to do that 335, 130 split, that's fine, but that's what we need to vote on, and we need to get comments on from the townhome before we do it. Like these numbers are based on that split, but they can change if we don't put those dollars into different accounts.
Well, that's why I think that starting with these numbers helps, so that we can say, okay, that's our starting ground. If the board's got any more thoughts on it, we'll talk about it. If not, then we'll throw it over. I'll get some homeowner comments on it. You know, I mean, what we're essentially saying at this point is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, is the money that the town homeowners have paid into the reserves, here it is. And the money that the single family homeowners have paid into the reserves, here it is. Here's all the money that's been paid in. That's exactly the way it is. And we're going to divide it that way. So I guess the argument to the contrary would be, if you're a town homeowner, you might be arguing, no, we want more of the money. And if that's your point, then I guess we'd be prepared to listen to it. So, I mean, before I open it up to the floor though, anything from Virginia or Meg on this?
No.
No, I've seen these numbers before. So yeah, I don't have any. I'm good.
Yeah. The only other thing to remind everyone before we open it up is, with this split, that 335, 130, that's not taking into account that the town homeowners, that's saying the town homeowners, all their money is just theirs. They didn't pay anything into the common account. So if you're a town homeowner, you're going to come on and say, we should have a lot more money. Just know from a starting point that having that 335, 135 split is every dollar you paid into reserve is just going into that townhome account. None of it's going into that common account. Going forward, it would be going into it. You'd have a percentage going into it, which is built in the budget that you can see right now. But all the past money would be just townhome money. So I guess you can open it up now and see.
So let me jump in with a couple of comments. First of all, somebody was asking if we could prorate it over a 3-year period, so it's not a major hit to everybody. That's something we'll have to discuss as we make our decisions here. Marilyn was asking, why out of 122,000 $800 of townhome contributions, or you're only putting a bit more than 10,000 in reserve fund from townhome, because you did, that's what your expenses are. If your bills are $130,000 a year, then we'll take $8,000 from everybody else to get it done. If your expenses are, it just depends on where your expenses are. So everything that's not used for operating costs is rolled over to the reserve. Do you have a different thought on that, Eric? Am I misinterpreting that?
Where's she getting the 120 number?
I don't know where that number specifically came from. So I was I'm saying if whatever money was being taken from the operating budget, when we've spent all the bills for the year, the rest is what we still have to put in our reserve. I don't know where she got those specific numbers from.
I don't know. She wants to go on and explain to her what she's considering a townhome contribution, if it's the reserves or what.
I don't know. Marilyn, are you there? And you want to
everything that you pay, it initially goes over your yearly expense first, and then whatever's left goes to the reserves.
If you take $160 times 12, we're putting in $1920 per townhome times 64, you come up with $122,880 annually for just this year. That's what we have this year going in as our contribution. So I was just confused that you had only taken 10,000 and put it in the reserve. If you're telling me that it's because of expenses, then it sounds like the townhomes are carrying most of their own expenses now.
Well, where is the $10,000 number coming from that you're saying?
You had that as our contribution to the reserve. It's on your sheet.
Which sheet are you looking at?
The one you had up. I don't know. I can't move your sheets around, but the one that we were all looking at.
I thought you were talking about the 2020 budget.
That one.
Where's your $10,000 amount?
Well, that's what you had over in, now wait a minute. That's what you said we contributed. I can't see that your stuff is so tiny. I can't really see as well as you can see.
But I'll make it bigger for you. There you go.
Okay, show the column that shows how much
this is the reserve contributions. The townhomes will be putting $40,000 into just theirs. So that's 40. Would be in the
but that's the wrong sheet. I'm looking at the one that you said we put in already. The one that we put in, whatever sheet that was.
Can you tell me the name of the sheet? It's on the bottom.
I think it's the one that you were probably showing the options, Eric. Option 1, 2, 3, 4, and option 1 was showing the current situation. Maybe I'm not sure if it's.
It's the sheet that was on there when you guys were discussing it.
That's this sheet.
No, that's going forward. I want the one that showed what the single homes put in and what the townhomes put in.
Okay. This one.
You got it. Okay, right over here under townhouse, you have our contribution for 2019 as 23,000, but then 2018, 2017 only a little over 10,000.
Yes. That is because your expenses were that much that all you had left over was 10,000 in those years if it got divided out based on option 1. So option 1 is, instead of having the 2018 and 2017 budgets as a massive budget for the whole community, in 2020 was the first year we started breaking out and saying, okay, well, the trash is 100% townhomes. Like, single family shouldn't pay for your trash pickup because we have to pay for our own. So we took those same things. So if you look at line 19, we went through those years and divided out the townhome maintenance, which was reported by AMG, which was a pain in the butt to go through the spreadsheets, but that got calculated out. The insurance contribution, which 90% of that is townhomes covering the property. The landscaping split based on what our landscaping companies gave us, and then the trash split. When you split those things out and looked at the actual expenses for the townhomes for those years, you guys only put in $10,000 more than your actual expenses. That's why it needs to be raised for 2021, because you're not saving enough money going forward to be able to cover well, now it's going to be the parking spots, but also the roofs, the siding, all the other major expenses from the reserve fund.
So are you saying that in those years, we were able to pay for everything and had 10,000 left over to go into the reserves?
Yes, but you should have been contributing a lot more to the reserves because there was like 50 to 70,000 going to the reserves those years. That's why the single families were saying they subsidized, because their expenses were in like the $400 to $500 range, but they were putting in 600 plus. Which, if you have 200 people putting in an extra $200, it covers the shortfall real quick. That's how it was done in the past, and that's why when people started arguing one way or the other, it's like, well, kind of everybody's right. Like, townhome owners should be upset because they are paying more, but no one's ever explained to everybody like this is what's being covered. And that's why with I was trying to pull up the 2020 budget for you, so I'll pull that up now. That was the first year that we split it when I did the budget, because it's a pain in the butt. No one would try to split it out, where we finally had a townhome column and a single family column. So you could actually see what you were paying and what it was going to. So like the trash removal, that was the one we split where it got divided by 65 because one of the pickups is the pool. So the townhomes would pay for that, and then the common covered that other one pickup. And then water, sewage would get split evenly from all the homeowners. Electricity gets split evenly among all the homeowners. It doesn't matter if you have a light in front of your house or you have a sidewalk or whatever it is. So most expenses got split. The ones that didn't get split evenly were landscape, because our landscape company told us theirs was a 55-45 break. And then like the tree trimming, they said like we made it 60-40, even though they said like 80% of it was in the townhomes. But we just didn't want to put the whole burden on the townhomes because you drive through Cabrini, everybody uses the trees. So that's when everything started getting broken down. It was also the first time we added the townhome maintenance, because it used to all go under one maintenance column. But when I went back through it, like all over 90% of the maintenance issues were all townhomes. So we were taking the general maintenance budget that everybody paid into, and it was only being used to do townhome repairs. So that's why we split that out. So there'll be two separate line items. So townhomes will pay into that. So you'll have money to cover those repairs. And then single family owners can't complain and say, hey, we're subsidizing. So starting 2021, you can say, no, you're not. Go screw yourselves. You're not subsidizing anything. The expenses are getting covered and we're saving. And you also get the added bonus that we're designating the reserve area for just townhomes. So you don't have to worry about a big pooled reserve fund and saying like, well, why am I paying so much? And it's getting used to like do something goofy in the conservation area or a retaining wall or something that's not townhomes. So that was the other big reason why I wanted to do it, because it protects the townhome owners, that you know in the budget that next year, out of the money you pay in, $8,000 of it would be going to the common fund for the reserves. And then the other 40,000 is only townhomes. So no one can touch it for anything else except for a townhome project. Does that make sense?
It's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, so we had a couple comments from Dan. Let me just throw these in real quick. Dan was saying if a major expense for the reserve is to cover the paving in 28 years, and I'm going to give a little bit of an input on this, and then I'll let Eric jump in. If the major expense for the reserve is to cover the paving in 28 years, and you raise our monthly dues by $45 a month times 64 townhomes, the townhomes will be putting $34,560 more per year, which means 28 years from now it'll be $967,680. Why do you need that much? Because that's not the only expense. Would be the first and easiest answer. And anytime somebody looks at the reserve budget, they always go, well, if you're taking this much money per year and you're doing it times this many years, in 40 years we'll have this. You realize we're going to spend money from that over the years, and that's what you have to consider. The roofs are going to need replaced. The siding's going to need to be replaced at some point. There'll be sidewalk repairs. There'll be a pump at the pool that goes out. There's all these different things across reserve budgets. Some of them are townhome only, and some of them are single family only. Not to mention, you have all those other little expenses that pop up that you might say, hey, can we take some money from the reserves and use it? Or can we short our reserves a little bit this year to prop up our expenses in our operating budget so that we can do some other project or change something? Because the board doesn't have to use the money in the way they originally planned to. They lay it out in a certain path, and then boards can make decisions as they go by. And I think that by splitting these out so that the townhomes have more of a laid out number, it's a whole lot harder for a board to quote unquote steal from your pot. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on that, Eric?
Okay. You do now. No, this is what it's down to. It's all from the reserve study. It's not like we're making up numbers. The townhome expenses are covering these line items: gutters, downspouts, roofs, asphalt, roofs, metal, vinyl shutters, walls, trim, painting, finishing. Calculated out. So if I scroll through, that's the expenses hitting each year. That's why the money's going in. So in 2027, for just the townhome, there's $100,000. 2028, there's $150,000 coming out. 2029, there's another $100,000 coming out. 2031, there's another $150,000 coming out. So that's why we need to take care of now and start putting the money away. So you'll have the money in the accounts when those expenses hit. Because in order to actually get an assessment done, which if you lived in a condo, you would have an agreement with your building when you buy it that they can just give you arbitrary assessments when they need to cover expenses. So you could have a $2,000 hit one month and they just send a bill out and say, you got to pay it. We're avoiding that because our CCRs make it very, very difficult to do those assessments because you need 67% agreement. So we'd have to get 40 some townhome owners to say, hey, we all want to pay an extra $3,000 this month. Well, some people will be on a fixed income. Some people will be on something else, and maybe you won't have the money to get the work done. The expenses for the common one, we move some of those down, which are the top ones from the townhome expenses to make common expenses. Catch basins, curbs, fences. It's like the wood perimeter fence. The trash enclosure got taken out, but there's also wood fences that are included that needed to stay in. Concrete sidewalks, asphalt, other random fences, retaining walls, entrance signage, all the pool stuff. So that's what the reserves are for. So everybody's saying like, hey, we can save up and we'll have this much money. Well, you won't, because you're spending same thing out of common. Every year or two, you're spending $50,000 to $100,000 on stuff. So there's no other way around it. Like, the money has to be there so we can spend it, because it's going to be very, very difficult to hit people with assessments. And once we get this taken care of, there should just be the very gradual increase in dues, like standard cost of living after this, because the townhomes won't have to worry about, well, is it going to go up $20 this month? Is it going to go $20 next year? If I'm on the board, or people that are on the board use my spreadsheets, then it shouldn't. And you're protected because you'll know exactly how much you put in, and you'll be able to go back and look at it and say, hey, I looked at it. We paid in X amount. What actually got spent was less than that. So we have an extra $10,000 to put in our reserve account. Well, that's $10,000 less you have to contribute the following year because you already have that money put in. So that'll help buffer it from having major increases ever going forward. So hope that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Besides what I'm saying. Yeah, basically, I mean, what I'm saying is the money you save over time, even if you're doing the math and you're looking at the amount and you're multiplying it times 28 years, you're not taking into account that money will be taken over the years. That's like looking at your savings account that's coming out of your check and saying, oh, at the end of 20 years, I'll have this much money. No, you're going to buy stuff. You're going on vacation. So it's just to add to his last comment. If you raise this by $25, and this is just where he did some math where he thinks that, well, if it's only this much money, it would give us this much money in the account and we'd be good to go. I know you're saying here, I feel like that's more of an understandable adjustment. And if you want to open up the mic there, Dan, and actually say something, I know what you're saying, but no, it's not. If you look at the graphs and charts there, it's not enough money. You will run short. You will at some point in the future. Somebody at some point in the future will have to pay for that. And I can tell you, when realtors look at property with their people, the smart realtors are asking us for where our reserves are and stuff like that. And if they know you don't have enough money in your reserves, your home's worth nothing, because who's going to buy a home? I think Meg said earlier she had a townhome that had a $10,000 hidden assessment coming. And that's what we're not wanting to do, is put you guys in a position where you have roofs that need replaced and siding that needs replaced, and you don't have the money to do it, and you can't get anybody to vote to do it. So it may not affect you if you're only a 5-year owner, but if you're planning to own long term, this is the right path to go. So Dan, did you want to hop in and say anything, or I know you've already put messages, but
yeah, I've been a single family homeowner in a townhome community, and just to touch on the split, $160 a quarter to me is peanuts. I mean, if you're a single family homeowner, but when we're paying $160 a month, obviously and I understand we're covering our costs and are covering our bills, but I feel a fair, obviously selfishly, option 3, every townhomeowner would want that. Townhomeowner would want that. I think option 2, or the new option on the table, I'm just throwing this out there. I think that's something that I feel is a better way to go. And as far as future expenses and as far as how long I'm going to be in this community, it's not going to be that much longer. So.
Well, and I can understand the hard thing I have is when you say option 1s and option 2s, can you be specific on that? Just because I don't have anything other than the screen in front of me, so I don't know which ones are which options.
You were talking about the split of the current reserves.
So option 1 is what you think is the current, and option 2 is what is the proposed?
Like I said, selfishly, option 3, which is in favor of the townhomes, any townhome owner would want that, but that's not realistic. I think option 2, which is, if I don't know if Eric wants to pull that up, but or his newly, the new option that he put on the table is, to me, personally, the better route to go.
Eric, could you please show the spreadsheet with the options again, the tab with the...
Yeah, if that's helpful, thank you. That way I can zoom in here. I'll take a look at what you're talking
I was
about.
trying to do the budget with his 185 number, but I can't share my screen to do it at the same time.
I gotcha.
And I'm not saying I'm not saying 185 over 28 years. I know that will increase from there. I'm saying currently for 2021, trying to cover all of that for 28 years from now, I think a fair adjustment for next year would be $25. And then year after that, you increase it some more. And if you have to increase it some more, like somebody suggested, a 3 or 4 year adjustment to get to the number that needs to cover things down the road.
That's why I was going to run it real quick. Whenever people don't need this screen anymore, I'll go and run it and just see what the shortfall will be for next year if it's at 185.
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, that helps. I mean, and I go ahead and pull up your other screen. The only thing I worry about, and Dan, I appreciate the input on it and everything. And I get your thoughts, and I think you sound like a realist, where you'd be like, look, I'm not gonna be here that longer. Don't raise dues at all if you can avoid it. Let me get through my time, and and I think that's a realistic. I mean, I get it. I think when I got here, it was like $550 or something like that was the dues for the single families. It is a pretty low amount. It's based off the number of homes. And if we could leave the dues exactly where they were until I sell my house, that would be the best way to go for me. But what we want to make sure we're doing is we're looking at the overall expenses for people over the full time that they're, the long term, so that for the person who lives here for 25, 30 years, this is where they stay. They're not eating it on the back end because we made it easy for people on the front end, because some of us thought we wouldn't live here for very long. So that is honestly where I'm trying to look at. I mean, I don't plan to live here until I die, hopefully, but I am thinking about the people who are going to live here, 25, 30 years down the road. So, or well, 40 years down the road, I guess, if we're really looking at what our numbers are. But like I said, you sound like a realist, so I get where you're coming from.
At the $185 amount, it is a $26,000 contribution to reserves. So it's 33 minus that. So they're short like $15,000 for reserves starting next year.
Yeah, and that's a big thing that we're trying to make sure that everybody sees, is that to keep the money where it needs to be over the future. If everybody in the community wants to come together and agree we're all going to be here for the next 5 years, we can drain the budget down to nothing. Nobody pay any more dues, and we'll just leave the community with $0 when we all sell. Anybody who's stupid enough to buy our homes is just going to have to start from zero. But we all, what we want to do is create a sloping budget that keeps everybody on a long-term track, in the same place, so that somebody who buys into your home now is in as good a place as somebody who buys into your home 20 years from now. It makes your home more stable. It makes the neighborhood worth more in an overall. And we don't want to keep shorting reserves, and that's what we're running into, is this continuous shorting of the reserves.
I mean, if we did that, we can stagger it so the increases a lot more on the reserves, where it's not 1%, it's like 5%. But someone's gonna have to enforce that over time, or it's still gonna be short.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it too, is, if we short the reserves now and the next board that comes in, say all of us have had enough and we all leave, the next board comes in and they go, well, I don't want to raise dues, and they short the reserve, and then the next board shorts the reserve. Eventually, if you don't plan to move out of our neighborhood, you're going to have to move out of the neighborhood, because you're going to want to get out of here as fast as possible, because there's not going to be any money for the long term, and it's going to hurt people in the long term. It's what happens, honestly, across the nation with HOAs, and it's why neighborhoods start to fall apart as time goes by, because nobody's paying into their reserves the way they need to. And I tell people all the time, if you're going to buy a new home, better be asking what the reserves are. Marilyn asked, Eric, do you know there will be a $26,000 shortage because you already know what the expenses will be in 2021? Well, yeah, I mean, I'll answer for him on that. We have an estimated expenses, and that's what Eric was saying before, was our budgets have been pretty well on point as time goes by, and we try to incorporate in a little bit for cost of living expenses, and it's no different than, do you have any idea what your power bill is going to be next month? No, you don't really know what your power bill is going to be, but you're able to estimate, I usually use this much power, this is how much my water bill is. I know whether or not, I kind of know where my expenses are. Especially if somebody's on a fixed budget, they're really looking like, what will the dollars and cents be? So Eric is making those assessments based off of where the budgets have been, where we expect them to go, basic cost of living. Obviously, if windmill power becomes the next big thing throughout our area, and we lose nuclear power and the cost of power goes up by 45%, the expenses are going to be way off. But if things get cheaper, we'll end up with extra money in the account, and that would just prevent any future raises. What we want to do is get it to the point where future boards don't need to worry about anything but a cost of living expense increase. I know Eric and I know Eric Carter was saying earlier he wanted to talk. Eric, are you still there?
Yes.
Hey, go ahead, man. You can have the floor.
Okay, so to my point, third point was 3, as one community, I don't believe that we should be splitting the reserve fund at all, as this adds complexity to something that has been simple the last 10 years. Let's keep the requirements that we ask for our esteemed board members simple. We are one community with one fund that handles one round of contracts when it comes to periodic maintenance of all our shared common areas. Thank you.
All right. And is Kate there? Did she have anything on this that she wanted to say, or?
She does have something prepared. Dealing with my daughter.
Okay, we'll give her a minute. No big deal. Let me know when she gets back. Just have her jump in and say, "Hey, I'm here," and we'll talk on this for a second in the meantime.
Okay.
Just for the board, if we do that 335 split, which was that option 1, and we made it around 185 for the dues for 2021, as long as it went up to that like 210 range in 2022, and we'd still get through the end with close to 200,000. So it's not the end of the world, but it's going to have to be known to everybody, like you're getting a $25 increase the following year too to finish settling up. I mean, I'm okay with that if that's what everybody wants to vote for. Not that that's the decision we're even making right now.
Well, and the flip flop of that is whether or not another board does it. And the other side of it is, if you're selling your home over the next year, you better be giving people a heads up, because you have knowledge, right? If we say we're going to raise your dues by a large percent, by $25, and it feels like it's a lot to you, to where you're mad about it, think how much you're angry the person you sell to is going to have when they bring their attorney to come back after you for selling your home to them, knowing there was this increase coming. Nobody planned for an increase before now, so that's kind of where we are. Nobody's in any. We were just been trying to get it on par with where it needs to be to make sure the money's there. To Eric Carter's point, I know a lot of people are wrapping their head really hard around the fact that we're splitting the reserve budget. It's on paper. It's the same pile of money. It's the same bank account. It's on paper. If it makes you feel better, okay, we're not going to split the budget. Your dues are just going up by a huge percentage, and there's no reason for it. You know, that's what you're getting before. You're like, but why did my dues go up by 6% and we didn't raise the single family homeowners by any percent? And like, reasons that don't matter to you. And we've done that in the past over the years. If you look back, we've raised your dues in the townhomes by a couple percent, different from what we did with the single family homeowners, because reasons. And yes, Kate, I see you there. Give me just a second here. So by breaking these budgets out on paper, it's so you can actually see and say, there's our money, that's our expenses, that's what we've done with it. My wife and I have the same bank account. Her check goes in, it's much bigger than mine because I'm a police officer and I don't make that much money in life. And she works for a hospital, she's smart, so she makes good money. Her check goes in, my check goes in. We don't argue over who's spending what money from the account though. She has a much bigger check going in. I make less money, but when I go and buy something, I don't look to see if it's my money or not. She would be in a much better place if on paper we kept track of how much money her checks were and how much money my checks were. And at the end of the year, we were paying our bills separated out and keeping track of what was going on. She would always be in a better place than me. That's where we're trying to put the townhome owners. You're paying all this money in, and we could just say, you know what, we're not going to pressure wash your homes this year. We're going to skip that. We're going to skip cleaning the gutters this year. We're only going to put 2% of your money into reserves, and we're going to spend the rest of your money on an awesome party or something, you know, down at the pool. And which is what the board's argued against. That's why I make the joke of it. And you would just look around and go, but what about our stuff? And as long as we're meeting the very bare minimums of the guidelines and quote unquote maintaining, which can be argued by attorneys all day long. And remember, we always will buy the best attorneys that your money can buy us. So, you know, the board always has this power that's very frustrating to a homeowner. And it's exactly the reason I got on the board, and this whole reason I've been on the board for all these years is to try to keep the board from having this unchecked power of, sure, sue us. I'm going to hire the best attorney in the state. I know who he is. And I'm going to use your money to do it. It's very, very frustrating. You know, to know in your mind that the board has access to $400,000 worth of legal representation. I promise you, you can't beat them. So you don't want your boards to have this power over you. You want it to be so broke out and so plain English that it's like, that's our money. It's been saved for this specific purpose. Use it for that. And you want to be able to hold them to it. And so we're not thinking of just ourselves or our board. We're thinking of when we're not on the board anymore, how we want it divided up. So it's on paper divided, and it's divided for the reasons of protecting you as much as anything else. So with that, Kate, please hop in, have the floor.
So it's me again. I was wanting to talk on that point.
You're fine. Go ahead.
So talking on that point, as a marriage, we're all one big happy family here, all the community. And yeah, as a part of accounting, you end up having that money set aside in your own books. There's nothing saying later on that could be moved to this or that, which would then require a CR change to have a separate fund in a separate account, fully protected for the townhomes, if that is the thought process of, okay, well, this money is the townhomes, and we are going to have it only be the townhomes. That may be the intent of this board, but who knows down the line.
So are you saying short all future expenses so that nobody can ever cheat you in the long run? Or are you saying it's better to get it short up?
Sorry, I didn't get it. I will need some example of it.
No, what he's saying is basically like, hey, we're saying it's separated and they $1,000. But if we're not on the board, the new board says, hey, it's all one money, we can just use it. That's why we're doing this. So if the next board does that, you can go back and point at the budget and say, no, we put $40,000 for designated townhome reserves. That money should not be touched. And then you can actually beat the board if you need to sue them. That's why it's protection for the townhomes to have this split. Is it going to be in completely separate accounts? No, but you will have an annual budget
that you get. You'll vote for your board members the following year. They will present you that annual budget. And you'll be able to say like, okay, this right now it was $70,000 gets put into a slush fund reserve account. That money could have been used for anything. We could have not pressure washed and painted and dropped $70,000 on townhomes this year if the board just said, oh, that's okay. It's maintenance. It's good enough. And they could have been okay with that. But that's why you need that protection that says you have the budget every year that's saying you are protected. This money is designated for that. So in 4 years, if they come in and say, hey, single families don't need to pay any more money into reserves because it's covered by townhomes, you can look at it and say, yeah, they do. This is our money that's for these repairs that are specified in the reserve study. And you have that protection. Because right now you don't have any protection. At least by splitting it out now, you have a level of protection. To get to where you want to modify the CCRs, I know I've explained to you before, you need like a 75% vote. So you're going to have to go around and get like, what, 240 people's signatures. So like, this is the best we can do right now to protect the townhomes and the extra money you've been putting in for the last 10 years that hasn't been protected at all for the part that's in reserves. It's just been in that slush fund. Especially,
yeah, I think what you got to keep in mind is there's not just changes to the CCRs and things like that. Precedent is a part of the legal world too. When a precedent is set, and we try very hard not to set precedents a lot of time. When we're doing things with dues and stuff like that, we try to be very careful, because once we do things a certain way a couple times, it becomes a legal precedent that you can argue. And that's what we're actually trying to put a precedent in place here, so that you can point back and say, if we ever get in this weird position down the line, we can point back and say, if you'll look, there was a precedent set, the board put this in motion and 2 more boards carried it forward. Why are you the 3rd board and now you're trying to mess with our money? And that's, like Eric's saying, we're trying to give you some protections to your money.
Well, from what I know, precedent, they can that can be argued away also.
My man, there are 3 lawyers in every courtroom. One of them sits in the middle and argues with the other 2, and the other 2 think they're both right. So yeah, we can argue everything all day long. I think our goal is to set it up so that the money is there, and if it has to be an argument over where the money goes later, we're trying to argue that the money be there. And I think that's the goal of this board and in the precedent we're trying to set. But yeah, I mean, again, we could go back. We can just cancel all dues for the next couple of years, and we can all live off the reserves until we're broke. And obviously that would be stupid too. So we're trying to get it to the point where we go in a nice sloping direction where everybody is paying enough money to keep things put in place. But if your argument is simply, but in the future somebody could take the money and do whatever they want with it, yeah, they could, and that's where we have to make an argument. Has the board looked to cut any expenses to make up the shortfall? Yes, we have gone over and over and over expenses. Every year we look at the expenses. We cut expenses in the insurance. I think it was last year or the year before we got the insurance redone, and saved a huge chunk of money, which I put out a big announcement. I think it's on the website back when that happened, because we were pretty pleased with it. We look at our different vendors all the time. AMG still works for the exact same money that they worked for back when we first signed them, minus some fees that we're arguing with them over at times. But generally speaking, we try to look at those expenses all the time. We bring in new trash companies, stuff like that. Tori was saying she wanted to talk. Tori, are you there?
I'm here. Hey, this is all really great conversation. I'm just trying to understand, are we done discussing the options of the split? Is the board going to vote on it? I mean, I realize it's almost 9 o'clock, so we can't stay on forever. So I'm just trying to understand what the path forward is. Have we decided that we're definitely going to go with a 335-130 split? Is the board still open to reviewing that? I think once that decision is made, the follow-up conversations can happen about potentially staggering that increase over 2 years. But it seems like we have a chicken egg situation here where we're trying to make a decision on how we're going to raise dues without actually knowing what those dues will be.
No, you're dead on, and you're bringing us back on track, which is where we were trying to get. But I kind of felt like we needed to let the path of the conversation wander a bit, so everybody could have a chance to kind of say some things. But yeah, I think that's where we are right now, is looking at that split right there. Is there any other feedback or comments on the split itself, other than just, I mean,
There's something
we want
on
more money.
chat, Rob.
What's that?
I
In
think
chat?
there's something in chat. Yep.
Let me take a look. What about the option that me and Eric talked about with a fourth option? Also, Katie wants me to read her comments. All right, so Eric, did you talk about a different option with, it says, what about the option that me and Eric talked about with a fourth option?
It was just averaging 1 and 3 if the board didn't want to go with option 1 where it was split out for what everybody paid. If they wanted to try to put more in the townhome, I just averaged 1 and 3. Not that it's necessarily needed, because it doesn't make that drastic of a change in terms of the overall, but it's just another way you can look at how we're putting in the initial starting amounts for the two.
All right. And Eric, you said Katie wants you to read her comments. Go ahead.
Okay, so she said, first, I'd like to say we are all one big community, friends, neighbors, and allies. We should not let this divide us in any way. I am sure that this is not the intention of the board to pit townhome against single family, but it does seem like that is how some are taking it. We need to remember we need to work together on this for the best outcome of the community. I would like to persuade the board to vote for option 3 on dividing the common fund. The decision, I understand, it will be townhomes putting aside a larger portion of the dues increase for upcoming large projects such as paving and roofs, but also paying for the common fund for the pool, common areas, etc. As the 231 single families don't have any big projects and their money will continue to go into the common fund will grow exponentially larger, and the townhomes being responsible for potentially 1.9 million worth of maintenance divided by only the 64 townhomes. I think it would be the prudent thing to do to pick option 3, so the townhomes have a better chance to raise the 1.9 million to pay for the maintenance plus what we will need to pay into the common fund. This will help give us a jump start on saving and not demoralize the townhome owners. I know that some of the single family homes owners look at the money in the common fund as theirs because they think that we do not pay our bills as townhome owners, and that we pay for our trash and landscaping. The townhomes have been paying their bills. They just have not been paying into the common fund as much as they should have. And by should, I mean we are only short by about $9 a month per townhome, I think. So not that far off. And that's all she has on the funds.
Okay. Just an announcement. When I first made these 3 options, it was when all of the asphalt was considered a townhome expense, which was that 550,000 hitting just townhomes. That was the original thing we were looking at when we first put this meeting together. Now the bulk of that amount of money is now hitting the common fund because of how we voted to split it. So with having the reserve split, with the asphalt being just the parking lots, I have to find the unhide sheet. Parking lot reserve expense. Good thing I made all these freaking spreadsheets, so useful now. What a pain in the ass that was.
So that's the contribution, parking lot reserve expense. There we go. Let me get the pictures off. So where before it was like 550,000 for that one line item, now the townhome's asphalt amount is 180. So that's $300,000 less there. It's another $100-some thousand less throughout the entire year, which now it's a total of auto sum. Oh, I gotta get. Is there a way to just get the WebEx crap out of the way so I can hit the auto sum button? There we go. $250,000 when before it was like 700,000, and now if we auto sum these ones, it's gonna mess up the rest of the spreadsheet, but that's okay. Okay, awesome. I can use auto sum that. I messed up the line items. Well, we'll just do some mental math. So that's 400 over $500,000. So that $500,000 that when we originally were looking at this was a townhome expense is now a common expense that everyone has to share over the next 30 years. So just general announcement. So people kind of understand, like originally we made those options. It was, all right, it's all a townhome expense right now. We need to figure out how to take some of that expense away. We took 2/3 of that expense and made it common expenses. So that's why I would be okay voting for option 1 now where I wasn't before, because I was thinking the board was leaning toward only Caprington, which would put more burden on the townhomes. But since we took all the burden away except the parking spots and made it common, I would be fine with doing the split like option 1 based on what you put in because of that $500,000 change from townhomes to a common expense in the asphalt. Hope that made sense.
Made sense to me, but I've been staring at it for the last couple weeks and asking you questions over and over and over. Please, if there's anybody out there who is looking at this stuff and your eyes are starting to cross, I say it all the time. I am by no means a stupid man. I'm not the smartest man in the room, but I'm not a stupid man. And there are times where I look at this stuff and I'm like, I don't know what he just said. So I do know what Eric just said because I've been following this particular line of thought. But if there's anybody who's just absolutely confused, we're absolutely willing to listen. Katie, oh, they're popping up. I think Eric and Katie are asking what option 2 or option 4 would look like, please. So for the purposes of the board getting ready to discuss it, because we're getting ready. I think we're headed towards voting on how to split the reserve here in the next few minutes. Can you throw up the options?
Rob already lost our 2-hour bet.
Yeah, I lost. You guys killed my mojo on that.
All right, it's back up. Option 1 was the split based on what got paid over 2017 to 2019. Option 2 was the made up one without insurance. Option 3 was the one that really doesn't make any sense because it's got negative amounts for 2018 and 2017, but that was the one where everybody paid equally into the common, into all the expenses first. And then new option that I just made up was just averaging 1 and 3. I wouldn't vote for the new option. I would vote for option 1 now, but.
I was about to say,
so
should we vote first and then see the results, or
keep this where I can see it for a second so I can read from this here. So let me go ahead. I don't think, is there any more discussion from the board? Okay. Let me go ahead and throw a motion on the table then. I would make a motion to split the reserve into a townhome and common option, or a townhome and common reserve. The common reserve would carry $334,432. I can't speak. God help me. $334,432. The townhome would carry $129,783. Somewhere in there was motion. That would be option 1, which we considered tonight. So to the board, discussion on any changes to that motion.
I would just change it to say it's a percent breakdown based on that. There's an extra $10,000 in it. So if we split that out, it would be an extra like
6,000 going into common, an extra 3,000 going into townhomes. It's not going to make a difference in terms of how it gets projected over 30 years, but that'll actually split out the dollar amounts as close as possible. It's
So
basically,
you say a percentage amount that I can use?
I would just say, because it's 130, there's another 10 in it that's close to, I'll just divide it real quick. That'd be easier than everybody wondering.
And I'm sorry, meanwhile, I will add to Eric's comment. I would feel more comfortable if it will be like percentage wise.
Yeah, I'm sitting here reading numbers off, and I can't even get through the numbers half the time. So that would be fine with me.
For you so that you can save your time and actually blah blah blah, right? Walk in the whatever, and then we'll take this off your hands.
So people are asking about where will the increase in land? Will it change from the $45? That $45 increase, you have to remember that was based off of if we voted for this option and we voted for that option and we made a decision on the budget that would land at a $45 increase at that 205. So there's a lot of numbers floating. So kind of hard.
With option one, with the extra $10,000 factored into the same split, it's 133,663. I would just say make it 135,000, but it's an easier number. Just say the motion to put $135,000 into the reserve, into the townhome specific reserve.
Okay. So motion to split the reserve into two reserves, a common reserve and a townhome reserve, with the townhome reserve carrying a beginning balance of 135,000. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So any discussion on change? And then real quick, Tori is asking, does moving the asphalt to common change where the townhomes need their specific savings account? Yes, it does. It helps you out a lot. There we go. Yeah, so if we had changed the asphalt in a different direction and said you have to pay for all your roads over there and everything, yeah, you would need a whole lot more money. So this is a much better place. So from the board on that reserve split, any discussion on any other changes?
I would just say on your note, you just said that's why people were freaking out about $100 increase, because if it all stayed townhome expense, it would have been over $100 increase per month to cover the expense. That's why we took $500,000+ of that expense away and made it common.
Right.
Sorry, just stepping in just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Again, is this the static numbers? Are they expected to change in the upcoming years? Just want to make sure that they are understood as an overall percentage and not the specific numbers, or how it works.
Or what numbers?
The 335 or 34 or 130 something.
That's the starting amount.
Exactly. Is there
so all we would vote to do is all we would
every year.
So, all we would be voting to do is to put 135 in their starting balance, and then as they contribute over the years, it'll keep building.
Okay, got you. Yeah, so we're voting currently only for the starting split.
Yeah, we're currently voting on the starting split, which somebody popped up in the chat and said, hey, what about a 50-50 split? I personally don't want a motion to change it to a 50-50 split because they didn't pay that money in. There's no reason to, I'm not going to turn around to 231 homes in the neighborhood and say, hey, we're taking some of your money and we're throwing it into their pot because reasons. I think equally we would have an argument from them saying, why are you taking money I paid in over the years and using it for those expenses? So no, I would vote to try to split it as best we can. The money paid in goes into the pot that it came from. So any other thoughts on that from anybody else on the board? Okay, if there's no other discussion, move for vote. Eric, I'd ask for a vote on that motion.
Yes.
Meg?
Learning the FDCCA, FCRA, eOscar, and other things.
We lost
Meg, are you there?
You're muted.
Sorry. Yes.
There we go. All right. Virginia?
I'm here. Yes.
Sabina?
Sorry, I'm not sure if you heard me. Yes.
Thank you. All right, the motion will pass, so we'll split the reserve with the 135 starting balance. All right. What's the next order of business there, Eric? I don't have it in front of me now. Do you have your notes?
Other than the fact that I can't spell unanimous.
Reserve fund plan. Asphalt option.
If we were going to do the 1% increase, or if we were going to change anything else with it. So that is, now that we have the 135 one.
You said anticipated dues, not a final, but an anticipated dues is what you wanted to throw up.
Yeah, well, this is the, well, that's if we short it next year and then build up. I mean, we can cover it if we short it next year and make it a less increase. I know people don't want to make it a lesser increase. Not making it a lesser increase with the split where they need to be putting in 40,000. That was, this budget has 40,000 going into townhomes, 38,000 going into common. Let me make sure that's right with our new parking split that we did. 40,000. Yep, that's the right one. So this is the one that we were at before, where it would be 205, and then there's not going to be any crazy increases after that. It's just cost of living. So it's one hit, then it's done. And that's with keeping the 40,000 initial, get rid of that one. We'll just make it 40,000. I'm not going to change all the numbers to change it by a couple thousand. It'll basically be 40,000 with a 1% increase. And then the other one will start at 38,000 with a 1% increase per year. So that's what we would need to vote on, that we're approving this as our budget plan. That's where it's going to come in if we're going to have it where they're taking the entire hit and paying 205 a month starting 2021, or if we're going to try to spread it over 2 years.
Where does that put single family homes? Do you increase single family homes to make any changes? Are they already at where they need to be with some extra in the dollars? I mean, where are we with that?
Single family is at 614, so they're under, so they're fine. They would stay at 620. And then we have an extra $1,000 in excess.
And that would just roll over into either somewhere in the budget or somewhere in the contribute. Okay. And then if we do the 205 on the townhomes, that puts us at a point where there's no need to raise dues beyond that. Hopefully in the next years, everything's like in a nice steady increase in cost of living at best. And I mean, what we can do is, I know people are talking about doing some sort of a split raise. The only problem with the split raise is you're losing money someplace. So, I mean, I would argue that if we're going to split that, I would say, instead of saying, okay, for future, because if we make it a thing where we say to townhome owners, especially those who are present tonight, we're gonna only raise your dues by half of that. And what do you guys think of that? The easy thing to do is go, of course, that sounds amazing, because it won't matter to me. I won't be here in 5 years. So let's do this. If we're going to short you next year, we're going to fully fund your reserves, but we're going to short your operating budget, which means if you have planned budgets of some sort of operating expense, say you're supposed to be pressure washed or something, you're going to run out of money early on the front end. So I think what I would say to the board is, if the plan is to short the increase, instead of taking the single hit, fully fund the reserves, short the operating expense, and when the townhomes run out of money, they run out of money, and that way the hit is taken by those who are making the decision to cut the money. I think that would be the fairest way to approach it. What do you guys think?
The issue we're going to run into is we really can't short their expenses. We're contracted for trash, we're contracted for landscaping, we're contracted for insurance. And the only thing we would say is like, hey, if you have a roof leak, we're not paying for it anymore, because the only thing you could really short would be townhome maintenance. That's still not going to cover the difference.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm looking at is, we plan for things like, obviously roof leaks, we always fix those, but there are things like the interior portions. When a roof leak happens, you come in and you paint the interior. Well, you'd have to turn to your neighbor and say, yeah, we shorted our budget for the maintenance this year. You're going to have to defer it to next year. There's also things like pressure washing. That's something we contract out per year. There's leaf removal. There's things within the landscaping budget. I think there's room for. I think there's definitely room to short on the front end, and I know you've got certain things contracted in, but you've got certain things. Don't we have line items for extra things that we're going to do up there in landscaping? Like, and right now we haven't broke those out completely, I know, but projects like going around and reseeding certain areas.
But I would say even like the landscape project with replacing bushes wouldn't be enough to do the offset. I mean, really, it would have to shorten the reserves and then refill it the next year because we pretty much hit our budget right on with all the expenses without anything extra going in. So there's not like we have like a $20,000 slush fund for townhomes just sitting there for them to pick something to do.
So they don't have any kind of expenditures for things like bushes replacement, the little projects they've got around there, things like that?
No, that was just part of the landscape expenses, the general one that we split with everybody. There wasn't a townhome specific landscape. We were including all the bushes with everybody's. Where we didn't have anything that was going to be pulled out. I think that would be a bigger hit for the townhomes if we did that. If we pulled it out and said, if it's a townhome bush, then you have to pay for it. We just made all the landscaping expenses unified and split evenly. I want to make sure
part of the concern going into this is, are they going to have money for those things that they come to us and say, like, you got people around the community who say, I had 2 bushes up front who died. Now those bushes are gone. Can I get a new bush? And we're just going to shrug our shoulders and go, it's not in your budget. Or do we have any room in the plan for that kind of thing?
I mean, we'd have to build the budget to do it. We don't have to decide on the exact budget tonight.
Right.
Get that stuff done and then we can play with the numbers. But that's
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. When we go to play with the numbers, I think what I would say going in is that people understand on the front end, when we're building your budget, we're going to look at your total amount of money you have. We're going to say how much money needs to go into reserves. Well, this much money needs to go into reserves. And then what's left over is going to be your operating budget. And I would argue that the board should plan to short the operating budget for the townhomes so that, I mean, if we may end up having to short the operating budget and then there's still money that comes out of the reserves. So it still hurts, but I don't think it's right to defer the pain onto future people because it won't affect the people who are making the decisions. And that's why I think my argument is, I think it's better to rip the Band-Aid off, make that increase, get it done and move forward with it so that your budget's fully funded, your operating expenses are fully funded, your reserve expenses are fully funded. You have everything you need and you don't need to worry about a $20 increase now and a $20 increase next year and all these different things. I mean, that would be my argument. And that's my thoughts on it. I guess,
I wouldn't short it at all. And if you are going to short it, like there really is, like you can see the budget. I have it up on the screen. Like there's no room to pull out. The landscaping's contracted. The pool is pretty much all set expenses. Nothing townhome specific. The only thing townhome specific was landscaping stuff and townhome repairs. Well, we can't fix someone's roof leak or not deciding to come off or not fix another issue that we're responsible to fix. Like we can't save that $15,000 out of their operating because we don't build in enough buffer in the budget. That's why we don't have.
Well, even so, it sounds like the argument is kind of self-solving in that it's like that's why you do it now, because there's no way to not increase it in a way that will get you guys fully funded and bring the reserves up. So, basically you're just gonna short people in the long term. So if you're planning to live here for another year, it's great for you to say, why don't we defer it for 5 years? Why don't we break this up into a 10-year deferment? And if you're planning to live here for more years, the people who want to defer it, they're doing it so they can benefit themselves.
The only thing I would say is if instead of doing 205, we make it 200 and just see where it hits. Like we may save on a couple line items. And then we know that way, but there's no other way we're going to be able to just magically come up with money. It's got to come from somewhere and someone's got to pay for it. So I would just say if we did 200, that's probably really the lowest that we should go. And that's still shorting it 3,000 or 4,000 out of the reserve, but we made up the fund if they're that worried. I know there's people that want to comment, so if you want to. I had something.
Yeah, let me take a look at that. Let me take a look at that. let me take a look at the comments real quick here, and then I'll bring some people in real fast. I know there's people want to say something.
Katie's at the bottom, so I'll just respond. Like, that's the whole point of doing this, is we're doing this so the single families don't have to keep subsidizing the townhomes.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think
have a set amount and know what they're paying for. So that's
what about raising the single family homes to help subsidize things? Yeah, no, that's the whole, that's the argument, is you're wanting people to pay for your stuff. You know, why don't we just increase the single family homes to the exact same amount, like $800 and some, and we bring yours down, and we'll just pay 50%, and you pay 50%, and we'll all pay the same amount, and we'll pay for your landscaping, and we'll pay for your roofs, and we'll do all that stuff. You know, that's what you're asking for. So no, that I don't think that's the right thing to do. Ben was asking to make a comment, and then I've got Dan also. So let me get Ben in here first.
Your main point, and I'm getting it straight, that you feel like we should just rip the Band-Aid off and go completely onto the $45 additional, or the close to 30% increase on our HOA. Well, kind of agreeing with what Daniel said earlier, it would be smarter, instead of being such an incline in our increase on our HOA, to gradually raise it. You keep explaining about putting that on the future owners. Well, when they do come in here, they will be paying that HOA fee for 205 or 2, but we will actually be gradually working up that way, instead of just directly getting that huge increase percentage-wise, because it is a large increase percentage-wise. And I hope you guys realize it is a pandemic. We are in possibly a transition in government. Things are ever evolving. So I feel like it will be easier to gradually raise our rate, instead of just completely dropping this huge rate on us. Because if you do the math, if you gradually raise our rate and we reach the goal that you will be good for us to actually put money into our reserve, it will still get there within 2 years, and just completely just hitting us over the head with a 30%, close to 30% increase on the first. Am I making sense? Or?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I think the only thing, and then Eric, I'll have Eric say the same thing. So if I'm looking at this right, a $45 increase times 12 times a month, that's $540 times 64 townhomes. That's $34,560. Am I doing the math right? So instead of raising the dues in such a way that you get $34,000, almost $34,500 extra per year, we say let's do half that. If as fast as you think you're catching up, you're falling behind, because every time you don't pay. So if you are a townhome owner who lives here right now, and you're like, I'm planning to live here for at least the next 8-9 years, your roofs are going to need repaired at some point, and we're just going to look at you and shrug and go, you don't have the money. And that's going to be a really bad day, a really bad day.
Well, instead of you've been raising it 1% per year. So let's say you go half, and we raise it just $25 this first year. And then
let me jump in for a second. For historical value, no, we've not raised it 1% per year. We've raised it at different percentages over the years. So that's what you're looking at are projections for a 1% increase.
Okay, so what's been the percentage of increase in the past year? Because we've only been here for a year. So
yeah, it's been. Yeah, I'd have to. I don't even know if Eric has those numbers offhand. It's been a couple percent. It's just changed over the years. What we usually used to do is we would look at the budget, and we'd try to figure in how much your expenses were going to be, how much a single family. And there's been times where we raised a single family, and it was because we weren't splitting the expenses out the way we are now. So everybody got raised a little bit. So I forget what the raises were, but one year
kind of an estimate. I've been on the homeowner association for 5 years, and we've only raised it 3 times. So that could tell you right there.
Remember?
Yeah. And
it was based off of different projections.
Yep, different projections for the year. And what was that number? 30 what? 30, how much was that? You said, Rob?
34,500.
Okay.
34,000.
So that money would go into the reserves. That's correct, right?
1,500.
That would go into
Well,
the
it increases to cover. It covers reserves and
reserve.
yeah, there's a.
Okay, so now if you counteract that, and what I mean by that is we spent 70,000 plus this summer. 70,000 plus. You short $20,000. We spent that this summer. Just for painting, just for the gutters, just for the doors, just for all the caulking and all that. We spent that for the pressure washing. So think about that.
Well, is the painting, is that something that's done on a yearly basis?
No.
Or is that something that has
no,
you save
your reserves for it, and then you come at it and do it over time. That's what.
Okay, so what I'm saying.
So the more you short your reserves now.
And can everyone stop for a second? Look, it's not that big of a deal if we short the reserve account next year. It's been getting shorted before, but it's going to get made up for if in 2 years we're at the 200 amount anyways. So if we short it in 2021, they don't have an expense scheduled to come out till 2023. It's a $40,000 expense. Well, to start 2021, they're going to have over $90,000 in it. So they will be able to cover whatever comes out. So we can increase it over 2 years, and it'll be better for the townhome owners because they're not going to get hit with it all at once. I'm fine with.
You don't have the money for those things.
Yeah. But there's nothing that.
The only thing to consider. The only thing to consider, I'm gonna say this last point one more time, and then I'll leave it to the board to make a decision and let everybody think about it. It's easy. I just had somebody else pop up. Yeah, what Eric Barnes says, raise it over the next 2 years. There is absolutely nothing to guarantee that any board in the future is going to follow anything we're doing. Your dues may never get raised to do. And when you don't have the money, I plan to live here for long enough that I'm not paying for your roofs and stuff. So we are trying to think long term. We can defer this stuff if you want to, but the next board may follow none of this plan. So that's part of what we're looking at. So I get where people are coming from, and there are a few people here from the townhomes tonight, but I also want you to look around and notice there's 64 townhomes, and this room doesn't have 64 people in it. So it's a big issue to some people. It's not a big issue to other people. That's kind of what we got. And I totally respect the participation, but personally looking at it, I look at the expenses and I'm looking at the long-term projection. I would much rather, as a single family homeowner, if they told me, hey, Rob, we're gonna have to raise your dues today and it's gonna suck, but this is how much it's gonna be. I personally would rather you just go ahead and tell me how much I need, because I don't want to have to owe it in 5-6 years from now. I don't want somebody to raise my dues a huge amount. I don't want to get a letter in the mail trying to beg me for money. So it's all fine and dandy. I mean, we can spread it out as many years as everybody wants to. We can spread it out over the next 40 years for all I care. It's not gonna affect me when there's no money in the pot, but it is going to affect people who are living over there. So that's my argument on it. I mean, I'll let everybody kind of argue it out. And if you guys want to raise it a different amount, I mean, obviously you've noticed I always let everybody else vote first. I vote last as a tiebreaker. So I'm not going to even vote that.
I'm not a person, I'm not, and they'll tell you, I don't believe in shorting anything, because you don't know what might come up that we have to pay for. I mean, you don't know what comes up that we might have to, something might have to be major that we have to pay for. And then you don't have the money, and then you're short. But see, we can explain, oh, you don't have the money because we deferred it for 2 years. Well, it's too late now because you don't have the money. It's just like a savings account. If you don't have the money, then you either have to go borrow the money or put it on your credit card or something in the single family homes. You don't have that option in townhomes. We don't have that option. So you can either pay it now or you're going to pay later. And if you want to pay later, you don't have an option to go back and say, oh, can we pull that money? That's where we are.
I understand where you guys are coming from, and I respect the hypotheticals and everything. But I mean, that kind of goes back to the budget of these people that live in the townhomes. I mean, that much of an increase, a slope of an increase at one time, you don't know what may happen just personally, that what you guys don't cover HOA wise in their personal townhome, being that they're paying that extra $500 a year, you don't know what may happen inside their home that is killing their budget. I feel like a gradual increase would be better than a actual incline increase, because it will give the opportunity for us to actually just catch up. I mean, everything is about to catch up, because the single family homes, I understand you guys have been paying and doing most of the bulk of everything in the HOA, but you have no increase at all. So it would be more, I just think it would be better for everybody. You want us to be a family and a team. I think it would just be better for everybody just to have a gradual increase, because we plan to be here for a while as well.
Right.
But we would just rather it gradually happen, because either way, if somebody moves in, they're gonna have to pay the HOA regardless.
Well, I want to point out too, and that's a good point, but Katie makes an great point that she didn't realize it would sway me this hard. She says it will affect you because the HOA is responsible. You're right. And that's even more of a reason why I don't want to have to pay for your stuff. So I think the board should increase the dues and get everybody on track now, because I don't want to pay for your stuff one day. So why would I want to, I mean, I'm trying to listen to you guys, but why would I want to defer a minute of it and take the chance that I get stuck with your bills down the road? And that's since she's trying to make a good point, she's saying, well, the HOA is responsible. You're right. So you're kind of arguing against yourself.
And then you got to understand now, I've been here for 11 years and I've been paying for you guys for 11 years and I don't get none of that money back. And I live here and I'm in townhomes. I mean, I live in a single family home. So I understand what you're saying, but you got to understand where I'm coming from, where the single family home people are coming from too. Because when we're in these annual meetings and you guys get to see one this year, the complaint is, why do we have to cover the townhomes? That's not what I moved here for. To cover someone else.
I want to open up. Because I'm still listening to people. I don't want anybody to think I've turned my brain off. And I know the other board members are still listening too. David says we've been short for this long. What's one more year? And he says we're in the middle of a pandemic. The pandemic excuse is done and over with at this point. We have a fiduciary responsibility. So I'll say this: as people and individuals on the board, we all have like concerns for our neighbors, and we want to do everything we can for you. But fiduciary responsibility says that we have to make decisions that work for the neighborhood. So if somebody in the neighborhood comes to me and says, "Hey, Rob, I can't pay any of my HOA dues this year because I lost my job. I can't just say, well, because it's a pandemic, I'm not going to foreclose on your home and we'll just have everybody else pay your dues this year." And we have people who are in that situation. We have foreclosures that are ongoing. We don't talk openly about individual foreclosures because we don't like to put people's business out there. But we could pull the numbers real quick and show you guys that there are people in this neighborhood who've not paid dues in a year. There are people who are far behind and they're in liens, they have foreclosures coming, that kind of thing. We don't go, well, stop all foreclosures because we're in a pandemic. We still have a responsibility to the rest of you guys in the neighborhood to go ahead and move forward with things, and get the dues money, make sure that the bills are paid. Because if we let everybody just say, well, it's a pandemic, I don't have the money, next thing you know, we're out of money. So from a fiduciary responsibility, I'm sitting here going, okay, explain to me again why we should continue to defer and continue to allow these things to fall off. We tried to make good projections in the past that would get us to the point where we need to be. And that's the problem we're running into now is we keep trying to get the money where it's supposed to be. And, we were talking 205, Eric is saying we could do 200 and he thinks the budget would probably be okay. And then if the budget has to come up by a few dollars next year, I could certainly see another board raising the dues by a couple dollars. I'm really concerned about raising the dues by $20 or so, and then saying, hey, we'll just sit here and cross our fingers that next year's board will follow through and bring it up the rest of the way. That's been my overall concern. And I want to make sure that I open up. Sorry, I'm looking here.
$30 increase per increase 12 years compared to $80 per month over.
Why don't we just let Daniel comment and then.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Get what our comments we need to so we can vote and get out of here.
Yeah, Daniel said he wanted to comment. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Daniel, why don't you go ahead?
just so everybody's clear, the 205, that's with taking into consideration the way you guys decided to split the paving expense in the future, correct? Okay. Now, with that said, I think the reason a lot of townhome owners have it's hard for us to stomach this major increase is because what we've been paying for as far as the landscaping. To me, I've lived here for 2 years and our lawns are a joke. And we've been paying money to have beautiful lawns and they look horrendous. So that's why it's a little hard to stomach adding more expense onto what we're already paying for when we don't feel like we've been getting what we've been paying for all along. I mean,
the issue we have there is you kind of did get what you paid for because it was all one big bucket and it was a very minimal contract for the past couple years. Last year was the first year we raised the contract. It was also the first year where it started to get it divided out a little bit between townhomes and single family. So before, everybody was paying for the townhome landscaping until last year. Last year was the first year it got broken out. And then for next year, the new contract we just signed is actually split with the two contract prices because it's different amounts for the townhome area. And then all the common areas are a separate contract. So now the townhomes are paying for what they're expecting to get. Before they weren't. It was getting covered by single families and they were minimal contracts that weren't covering what needed because the townhomes weren't paying enough in to cover the actual expenses and put money toward the reserves that we needed to. So going forward, like they already did the aerating and seeding. They've already picked up leaves, which in the past is a pain in the ass getting someone to pick up leaves. They're like the Monday after the hurricane, they're like raking it up, putting it in the road, and then getting the seeding and cutting done, and then picked it up the next day with their leaf truck. So, I mean, I would say that we're getting very good landscape service right now with the current contract because it's a bigger company and a bigger contract.
So you can state on this discussion that you expect our lawns to start looking better moving forward?
God help us, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, all of us feel the same way on that. God, well, and here's what I'd say on that, Dan, and it's a great point, but it's, you always got to remember if you've been paying for we were paying like $30-some thousand for landscaping. We just doubled that. We increased it up to like, peanuts in that world. It sounds like a lot. I spent years arguing about it for sure. But now that we're paying almost double that, you expect to see those services go up. We were really frustrated because we brought in a landscaper and then he had his own world issues that knocked him down. So, the pandemic included also some family issues, and his company folded in, and that left us kind of holding the bag on some problems. But we brought in US Lawns because they are a big company. We have worked with them in the past, and we're really hoping to see with the increased amount better services that do provide those things. However, if we short that budget going into next year, I would be screaming up and down. It's a 30-day contract. And I know Eric was sitting there saying the budget's set and everything. I could scream up and down to the board, cut the 30-day contract, send them a notice telling them we're cutting that contract, and we'll cut that contract down to like a $40,000 budget instead of a $57,000 or whatever, so that your dues fall in and where they're paying for what they're getting. So we really are trying to make it so that you guys are getting what you're paying for, and we're trying to use your money in the most effective way. And again, like I was saying earlier, when you split this budget out the way you do, it gives the townhomes a whole lot more control. You don't have to be on the board to have input. We have screamed and begged for townhome owners' input in the past. So I promise you, if I had a couple townhome owners show up at a meeting and they say, hey, we want to talk about what our money is being spent on and we want to have some influence, I don't think you'll have any problem getting a board to say, where do you want us to spend your money? Tell us what you want us to do with it, and spend that money where it needs to be spent. So we wanted to have this discussion tonight, and everybody, thank you for all your time again. We wanted to have this discussion tonight so we could all come to a point where we go, all right, we see where this is going, we get what the money's for. But yeah, I mean, if we raise the dues up and we get it where you guys need to be, you've got money to fund all the stuff you're looking for and your reserves. If we don't raise it up, I think we need to affect the operating budget in some way, and that'll continue to leave you with subpar landscaping services, which is not what you want.
Oops.
Oh, one other thing with the lawns, if you're in the group that got the seeding and aerating this year, there are not water sprinklers in your yard. So if you don't water your grass, it's not going to grow. doesn't just magically get watered. So if it's not got rain coming, get a hose out and spray some water on it.
At all. Somebody was saying, why is it still being said that the single family homes are covering our bills? We're covering our bills. You're not paying for your reserves. You're not saving that. Your bills are all of your operating expenses and your projected reserves. If you're not paying all your expenses and the projected reserves, you're not paying your bills. That's your bills. You have to pay for all the pizza you eat, and you have to chip into the savings account. But you guys are eating up all the pizza, and then you're like cutting out on the savings account, and that's what we're talking about. You're not paying your bills. I mean, if we refunded your reserves fully, you'd run short by every single year on your operating expenses. That's why we keep saying, the single family homes are subsidizing that amount for you, and we want to get it to where it's even. Let me look if there's any other quick comments, and then we'll see if we got anything else. I just spoke with Randall from US Lawns yesterday. He told me my lawn that's
Eric already
different
answered
than
that,
the
Rob.
older townhomes. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Oh, I see the Bermuda common area that needs water. The common areas are watered. They have sprinkler heads in them. Do I need to get a huge hose? Not for the common areas. The common areas have sprinkler heads up around the pool and stuff like that, and out by the townhome entrances, that kind of stuff. I see Eric's answering some stuff.
Sorry, voting on what?
Hey, motion to what we doing?
Yeah, so let's develop a motion around this. I think we've had plenty of conversation on it. So where do we need to be with this, Eric? Do we need to come up with a number tonight?
You gotta.
If we want to, I would just say single families at 60 and then townhomes at 200 within what 5% would be within $10 of that amount. So that way, that's stuff we can.
So you're saying the $200 for townhomes would put them in a range where they're pretty close?
That generally, it's going to be 200. It's going to be $200 and $620 for the single families within a 10% range. So it could go up to, I guess we can make it 5% range. So it could go up to 210, or it could go down to 190. But that at least gives us wiggle room when I have to do all the final numbers.
I got you. That makes me feel more comfortable, because I'm afraid to commit to a number tonight that we can't adjust depending on where the contracts come in. So can you word that into a budget since you got those numbers, or word that into a motion since you got those numbers?
I would just say make it 10% for now. It's probably going to end up pretty darn close to 620, 200, but that way at least we know. So you have a motion to that. So it's 2022 single family dues. Was it 155? 155 per quarter, and townhome dues at 200 per month.
Eric, I'm sorry. It's just been too late, and I want to make sure that I'm not missing. What is the current one? I know that it's 155 for single families. What is the current for townhomes?
Current for townhomes is 160 per month.
And what will be the?
Is it 155? I thought we were at 160 a quarter. Maybe I must be way off.
155.
No, 20.
It's 160. I think it's 160.
Yeah, it's 155. 620 divided by 4.
Yeah.
And what is the 2021?
You mean 2021, Eric?
21, yeah, it should be 2021.
Okay, sorry. And then what will be the next years after 2021?
It's going to be whatever the standard increase is that pays the bills. That's why we do the budget every year. It's not a set.
Yeah. Each year the board does kind of a simplified version of this, Savina. This is a more difficult version because we're breaking out the budget so much and being much more specific with the money. Normally it's just a quick look at the budget and raise it by a percent or two.
Got it. Okay. So we're not expecting these numbers to repeat every year. It's not like it will be 10% increase every year for townhomes.
No. No.
No, that's the goal, is to get it where it needs to be, so they don't have these big increases.
Gotcha.
Thus, the being the 10% is not an increase. The 10% is a margin for error for us when we finalize the budget. So that is, so we're not saying where it's 200, because if it comes out where it ends up being less than that, we're not going to charge them 200. We'll charge them 195 or whatever the number is. If it ends up being more than that, we don't want to be committed to the 200 if it's expenses are going to be 205. So I'm just putting it within a 10% margin of error, so that way we have a little bit of wiggle room, but everybody generally has an idea of where their budget's going to land.
Yeah, totally makes sense, Eric. I like percentage more than the actual numbers. It makes it more, yeah. Okay.
All right, so what's your final motion going to be there?
There you go. 2021 motion for 2021 single family dues to be at 155 a quarter or 620 annually, and townhome dues to be at $200 a month or $2,400 annually, within a 10% margin of error when we finalize it next month.
From the board, any further discussion on this before we poll for a vote?
2,400 a month.
No, it's 200 a month. It's 2,400 total for the year. I just put it in there. So
Oh, okay. Okay, got you. Okay, I see it. Okay.
Eric, I'm sorry. I want to ask one more question before we vote. How big is the difference for the long-term impact if it will be less than 10%? Sorry, if it will be less than 200 a month, like if it will be.
it's just the reserve getting shorted. So if we make it 185, then the reserve is shorted $15,000. It'll have to get made up over the next few years. They still have to cover the operating expenses, but the reserve won't be getting 40,000. So instead of the reserve account getting the 40,000, it was supposed to get, 40,000, it would be getting 25,000. So assuming the board next year increases it again and gets it to the right amount, it's still going to be $15,000 short. So it'll have to be an extra $1,000 put in each year. So, I mean, it's doable, but it won't be a 1% increase. If you look at this sheet where it's 40,000, 40,400, 40,800, it won't have that 1% increase. It'll be like probably a 5% increase. So over the, it'll be more.
But it will reduce the weight of increase from this year. So it's really just spreading it.
Yeah, it won't be, they won't have any big increases going forward because they're pretty much where they're at. It'll be basically standard cost of living. Because if we do it this year, they're at where they should be paying, and then it's standard going forward, which is why everyone's like, well, why didn't single families go up? Well, they've been overpaying. Now we're getting close to where single families are at the amount they should be paying once we short it all out. So going forward, single families will start going up a little bit each year too. But we had to get them to the right amounts first, and at some point we had to do it. Just I was the one dumb enough to spend all the time doing it.
You did an amazing job. I personally think it's,
All right, any other discussion or questions from the board? All right, with that said, Meg, you wage a vote on this motion.
Don't start with me.
Notice I circulated it around. I put firsties on everybody else.
Well, I'm glad that I've lived in a townhouse and other developments, so I can, that's helped. So, I mean, I feel like 200 is good. So what Eric said.
So you're a yes for the motion or no for the motion?
It's a slight little compromise, but without really messing us up. So I think that.
So you're a yes or no?
So you have to what? Yes.
You're yes.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yes or no?
Sabina?
Yes, with 200, a little bit concerned about 10% margin. So it's a partial yes to the motion.
Okay, so then you want to, so do you want to amend the motion, or do you want to
I
just
would
vote no,
propose
or
less margin. for-
5%, so it can go up to 210. I don't care. I'll make it 5%. I don't think it's gonna. So I can make it 5%.
Well,
yeah. So let's.
I'm sorry. I am emotional here about pandemic year. I do think we are in exceptional times, and I can't just take it away with ignoring it. So for me, I would think that the margin or amount decrease will be impactful. So 5% is what I feel more comfortable.
Okay. And it's probably not going to make a difference anyways. It's just whatever the numbers come out to. It's probably going to be pretty darn close to 200, but we can make it 5%. That
Yeah.
Under 210.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Does anybody have a problem with amending the motion to 5%?
Nope.
Okay. For anybody who's ever been in an HOA, you may notice we kind of use like a halfway version of Robert's Rules of Order, and that's just because we don't have to by this date. And if you don't know what Robert's Rules of Order are, don't worry about it. So the motion's been amended. The motion now is, could you read the new motion as it is, Eric?
Motion to set the 2021 single family dues at $155 a quarter, which is $620 annually, and the townhome dues at $200 a month, which is $2,400 annually, within a 5% margin of error.
All right, so with the new motion, is there any other discussion on the motion? This is that time to scream point of order and all that kind of stuff. Nobody? Okay, with that, we'll open the voting up. This time we'll start with Virginia. Virginia.
Yes.
Meg.
Yes.
Sabina?
Yes.
Eric?
I'll say no, because I think I can spread it out over 2 years, but I'm getting outvoted.
What'd you say?
All right.
You're saying no way.
He voted no. He says he feels like he can spread it over 2 years, but that would have been a point of order. So we'll just say, Eric, we a no. I'll say yes. So motion will pass.
Boot it out.
4-1. What else do you need to do? Is that the last? That's the last item you need really tonight, right, Eric?
Yep, we're done.
Ooh, hallelujah.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and close the meeting then. It is, what time is it? 9:49 or so. I got 9:49, 9:50 at night. So Eric, you win the bet.
Hey Rob, since we did not go over the landscaping, we'll just give you the information so you can make a video next week on the updates.
I'll make a video. We'll see how many people watch my video.
Okay, well that's fine. You'll still have an update. So the people that are on here know that you'll get a video next week for the updates on the landscaping.
Sounds good to me.
For the town.
All right. Well, I thank everybody for being here tonight and listening and having a conversation and everything.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.